Troy, a former Trump administration official who's acting as a surrogate for the Harris campaign, says disaffected Republicans could make the difference in a close election.
I think this vote will be critical. I think that when you're in such a competitive election environment and the margins are so slim in terms of what we're seeing, every vote will matter.
Harris will be joined by more than 100 Republican supporters, including former Congressman Adam Kinzinger, according to a campaign official who wasn't authorized to speak publicly about the plans. Sarah McCammon, NPR News, Washington.
Billionaire Elon Musk has donated nearly $75 million to the effort to re-elect Donald Trump as president. NPR's Bobby Allen reports that's according to federal campaign finance records, tallying Musk's contributions just weeks before the election.
Musk has pumped just shy of $75 million into the political action committee America PAC, which Musk formed this summer to back Trump. Musk is putting the money into battleground states, hoping to boost turnout for Trump by paying for droves of canvassers to campaign door to door. In recent months, Musk has gone all in for Trump, making a cameo at a Pennsylvania campaign rally wearing a black MAGA hat. Musk, whose companies have received billions of dollars in federal contracts, has been pushing policy positions like securing the southern border and improving public safety. Writing on X recently, Musk says he is soon planning a series of talks throughout Pennsylvania for voters in the state. Bobby Allen, NPR News.
Small businesses that are hoping to get federal loans for hurricane-related losses will have to wait. NPR's Andrea Hsu reports the White House says a key disaster loan program has run out of money.
Small businesses and homeowners whose property was damaged by Hurricanes Helene or Milton may be eligible for low-interest loans from the Small Business Administration. The loans are geared toward providing immediate relief to help businesses stay afloat and avoid bankruptcy. The government loans are seen as key because right after disaster, private lenders may be reluctant to approve loans due to the uncertainty of the situation. Even with funds exhausted, the SBA says it will continue processing loan applications so that it can disperse funds once Congress approves additional disaster funding. Andrea Hsu, NPR News.
On Wall Street, the Dow was up more than 200 points. The Nasdaq is down 25. This is NPR.
Good morning. With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro. The state could be facing legal action after failing to respond to a report on segregation in schools, according to one education expert. The report by the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, released in June, found that almost two-thirds of Massachusetts schools are segregated. Raul Fernandez was head of DESE's Racial Imbalance Advisory Council when this report was released. He tells NBC Boston he thinks a lawsuit against the state may be the inevitable outcome of the large disparities suffered by students of color in segregated schools.
It should not be the case that where we see high proportions of Latino and Black students that we see worse educational outcomes, but that is the case. Now the question is, who's responsible for that?
The segregated schools in Massachusetts featured in the report serve more than 500,000 students. Massachusetts State Treasurer Deb Goldberg says the launch of the state's online lottery system probably won't happen until April of 2026. Goldberg says the rollout is taking about 5 months longer than expected. The State House News Service reports that the state has already issued a request for vendors to start designing the online gaming system. In sports, the Bruins are in Colorado tonight. The Celtics open the season on Tuesday against the Knicks at the TD Garden. They'll raise the banner. Sunny mid-50s today, clear and upper 30s overnight. And be aware, some areas may see an early morning frost. Tell your plants to bundle up. It's 50 degrees right now. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Solidigm, focused on making solid-state storage optimized for performance and efficiency. Solidigm believes a new era in AI requires a new approach to data storage. StorageForAI.com.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you. And Boston South Visual Art Trail, including Attleboro Arts Museum, the Art Complex Museum in Duxbury, Fullercraft Museum in Brockton, Plymouth Center for the Arts, and South Shore Art Center, Cohasset. BostonSouthVisualArtTrail.org. And the Boston Philharmonic with conductor Benjamin Zander, performing Beethoven's Egmont Overture, Bartók's Concerto for Orchestra, and Brahms' Violin Concerto with soloist Guy Braunstein at Symphony Hall, October 20th. Tickets at bostonphil.org.
Friday. I am Marjorie Egan. Welcome to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library. We are streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. We're very excited. Astronaut Sunita Williams is going to zoom in from outer space. She's on the International Space Station. She's going to be talking to us at 11:40. We are here, of course, here on Earth. And then Governor Maura Healey is going to be here from 1 to 2, taking our questions and yours. And I want to mention, too, that GBH and New England Public Media are hosting a debate tomorrow night at 7 o'clock between Senator Elizabeth Warren and her GOP challenger, John Deaton. That, of course, will be broadcast on GBH Channel 2. Hey, Jim.
So each day at 11 this week, we've been leading our own debates, more sort of conversations on each of the 5 Massachusetts ballot questions this year, after which you're able to weigh in. Yesterday was question 4 on legalizing certain psychedelics. If you go to our Twitter page or mine, you can see which questions, which day, and what we're doing tomorrow and Friday. And if you go to gbhnews.com, you can watch all of this week's debate. But before I introduce this one, I want to say thank you very much for clarifying that we are on planet Earth. Because
we are on planet Earth.
I was not 100% sure, but now I am.
We wonder.
Well, one of us does. In any case, today's debate is on question 2, whether to eliminate the 10th grade MCAS exam as a graduation requirement. Voting yes on question 2 would diminish the state's role as a gatekeeper on high school graduation. Students would still need to take the 10th grade MCAS exam, but would no longer need to pass in order to graduate. Local districts would set their own criteria for graduation, informed by state education standards, but not tied to any formal state assessment. Voting no on question 2 would keep the status quo. MCAS would remain a graduation requirement for kids here. Unlike other days when your calls and comments are taken immediately after the debate, as Marjorie said, today at 11:40 we're going to be talking on Zoom with Sunita Williams, the commander of the International Space Station. So that means if we have time, we'll take a few questions right after, but the bulk of your questions, comments, thoughts on question 2 will come in the noon hour. Joining us now from the yes side is Deb McCarthy. She's vice president of the Massachusetts Teachers Association. Deb, it's great to meet you. Thank you so much for being here.
My pleasure.
And from the no side, Keri Rodrigues is the founder of the National Parents Union. Keri, it's great to have you too.
Thanks for having me.
Our pleasure.
So, Deb, let's start with you. Why do you support question 2?
So, great question. Thanks for inviting me here.
Pleasure.
So, I'm an educator for 25 years in the classroom. When the MCAS first came out, I was known as the MCAS guru in my building. I believed in the promise of ed reform, but over time, the impact did not match the intent. And rather than getting the science lab in Hull that students in Wellesley got, we still haven't gotten it. And instead of it addressing an opportunity gap, it's now become an opportunity chasm. The other thing that I think is really important is there is a certain profile of learners who are repetitively harmed time and time again. We know this. The data reflects it. People say, well, we got to do things differently, but nobody is. And so by going to the ballot, we were able to collect more than 170,000 signatures in the fall, and we had no problem in the spring meeting that metric. So that's why I'm here.
Keri, why should people vote no?
Because this is about keeping our promise to the children of the Commonwealth, and this is how we do it, is by making sure that every child in Massachusetts gets that constitutionally protected right to a high-quality education. And by giving every child in Massachusetts the same test, we can determine where the inequities lie so that we can make sure that as a Commonwealth, we're making the right investments in schools and in situations that need help, that need additional resources, and kids that are not getting access to that high-quality education. It's how we keep that promise. It is how we ensure that every child in Massachusetts is going to be able to access economic mobility.
Deb, just so people are clear, Deb McCarthy from the yes side, we have 351 cities and towns. Should you prevail and the voters of Massachusetts embrace a yes vote, we'll have 351 graduation standards, essentially, right? No uniform statewide standard for graduation. Is that factually accurate?
I strongly disagree.
Why is that?
Because in Massachusetts, we have mandated frameworks. And as educators, we must teach to the frameworks, Our lesson plans are aligned to the standards. Our curriculum is aligned to the standards. Our report cards are aligned to the standards. And we are evaluated quite rigorously according to these standards. And
by the way, just on that note for a second, I looked for those standards this morning. Other than gym, civics, and some history thing, I couldn't find them, for whatever it's worth. Let me just finish. Number two, I don't see who oversees them. I don't see who enforces the standards if they're not met. So fill me in, if you would.
Great question. From DESE this morning. We have frameworks in health and physical education. It's a 54-page document. World language, 47 pages. We have art standards.
What happens when a local district doesn't comply?
Well,
Isn't that really the issue, enforceability?
Another really good question. Thank you.
Well, thank you.
Again, right from DESE this morning. Right now, 100% of 165 schools are reporting that their students comply with the Mass Core requirements. Currently, 266 districts are meeting that metric at 85% of the students.
Okay, let's stop there just for a second. Are you satisfied with that?
No, not at all, because what we're talking about is inputs. We're talking about exposure to curriculum. And we hope that folks do a good job, but we really don't have any check and balance around outputs, whether or not our kids, having been exposed to these frameworks, actually are proficient in the subjects as promised. This is the problem. It's great, we're talking a lot about like the trade-off is gonna be, well, we'll make sure everybody gets Mass Core, which is another framework in the hopes that every kid will have access to a high quality curriculum. Access and exposure is not actual proficiency. Making sure kids, by the time they leave K through 12 education in Massachusetts, are proficient in these subjects is the promise, and that's what we need to do here.
I think
just a quick fact check here. Half of Massachusetts high schools don't require Mass Core, 4 years of English, math, phys ed, 3 years of science, etc. So it's not enforced, obviously.
Well, I got my information from the Department of Education's webpage. You can go on there and get it. That's where I got all this information from this morning. So
but how about, but forget DESE just for a second. The point that Keri's making, I think it'd be good for you to respond to. Even if the standards are there, as you're suggesting a minute ago. Well, even if you're there, she raises the issue is how do we know that kids are proficient in those areas after, even if all those standards are met? How do we know that?
So let's be clear, the MCAS aren't going anywhere, all right? And what is really clear to me is the disconnect between what actually happens in our classrooms. You can walk into any kindergarten classroom and there are I-CAN objectives that are aligned with the standards. Educators are evaluated on these standards. I have to select power standards where I have to show the assessments. We have online portals that are aligned with the MCAS where that data.
Can we just stop for the first thing I think is worth responding to? MCAS, we should have made this clear up front. MCAS is going nowhere, including the 10th grade MCAS. It's just not a graduation requirement. So why doesn't that, as Deb say, Keri, test the proficiency that you're worried about?
Because if you're telling kids that they do not need to pass the MCAS in order to graduate, what level of effort are they going to put in to the actual requirement itself?
Isn't that dependent on the teacher?
Well, I would argue, well, what if we start telling 10th graders who also take Massachusetts driving tests that all you have to do is be exposed to really high quality driver's ed curriculum. And we're gonna give you the best teachers and we're gonna put stuff on the walls that tells you what the standards are. But we're not gonna make you pass the test because you know what? We're just gonna trust that just by osmosis, by being near this data, we're going to assume that you're a great driver. We would never do that.
We're talking
it doesn't make any sense.
That's the voice of Keri Rodrigues, founder of the National Parents Union. She wants you to vote no on question 2. Deb McCarthy, the vice president of the Mass Teachers Association, wants you to vote yes.
Keri, Deb is a teacher, been a teacher for a long time. A lot of teachers, I think most teachers, are not in favor of the graduation requirement for MCAS. So why doesn't a teacher know better than me or Jim or just regular parents?
Well, I wouldn't argue that most teachers are in favor of getting rid of MCAS. We've had hundreds and thousands of teachers actually speak out saying that MCAS is important, that they actually tailor what happens in the classroom based on a lot of the information and the data that we get in terms of whether or not we are using research-backed curriculum, whether or not our curriculum is actually effective. Our lesson plans are effective. And listen, I have a lot of respect for teachers and their expertise, and I think their voices are important in this conversation, which is why the MCAS test itself is created by teachers that are members of the Massachusetts Teachers Association. 250 of them every single year help to create the MCAS exam. There are 2 different committees that vet it to make sure that it's not biased, that the questions are accurate, all of this. So the MTA is actually a deep part of creating this assessment to make sure that it is effective and it is important for our kids.
You want to respond?
Yeah, 2 points. One, I want to go back to the driver's license. It's one of my favorite analogies. My mother was in the first class of women to graduate from Boston College, triple major, straight A student. She aced her driver's exam, the written exam, aced it. She was not a good driver. And as an educator, I know firsthand that I have students who are really good at knowing the content, but they're not good test takers. And so that's my first point. Second of all, it's not just the Massachusetts Teachers Association. It's AFT. It's BTU.
That's the other teachers union.
Right, the other teachers union. We have endorsed this, but it's also the Massachusetts Association of School Committees, the Massachusetts Parents Teachers Association, AFL-CIO.
Deb, you know who has not endorsed this?
Yes.
No, if I may, the Attorney General was with us yesterday. She graduated from Boston Schools.
Public Schools, yep.
She said no.
Yeah.
The governor, who your union endorsed for governor, said no. What's
Tutwiler, who's
the lieutenant governor, the Senate president, the Speaker of the House.
Why would somebody who you thought was the best choice to be governor go against your guidance unless she thought Governor Healey or the Attorney General thought that these tests were critical for kids' success?
So 2 really important points. This ballot measure is being supported by parents, educators, community activists, and students. 2, we met for more than 7 weeks with Patrick Tutwiler, and we came pretty close to almost having a legislative solution. And there was a lot of alignment and agreement that we are not doing things right. And from a report that Patrick Tutwiler and Russell Justin are on.
Who's Russell? Who's Russell?
He's the acting commissioner.
Okay.
While most students will meet this, nearly all who feel are English language learners, students with disabilities, or students without an adequate course preparation. It is important to note that 85% who never pass it are ELL learners and students with disabilities.
I want Keri to respond to that. It's very important. But before she does, you didn't respond to my question. Your endorsed candidate for governor, the person you thought best to lead the Commonwealth, among other elected leaders in the state, as we said, the Attorney General yesterday, said this is a bad idea. What does she not know that you do? Doesn't she care about the kids of the Commonwealth?
I'd love to have a conversation with her firsthand.
But what do you think? I mean, you endorsed her.
What do I think about why?
Her deciding that her taking the position that
this is
a
what
no
I
vote
think.
is the correct
Honestly,
vote.
she is not standing beside the educators in Massachusetts. She is not standing beside the Massachusetts Association of School Committees. She is not standing beside the Massachusetts Parent Teachers Association. She is not standing beside AFL-CIO. She is not standing beside the 170,000 who signed the signature in the fall, or the
Do you regret your endorsement?
I'm not here to talk about endorsements. I'm here to talk about the ballot question.
What do you want to respond,
Well,
Keri?
the fact of the matter is, I think the governor, the lieutenant governor, the Senate president, the Speaker of the House, the Secretary of Education, all of these folks, and every single day there are more and more people coming out saying this is not a good idea. We couldn't even get the mayor of Boston on the record to say one way or the other because of political pressure here. But I think what they understand is the significant impact this is going to have not only on the children of the Commonwealth, who are going to be handed a piece of paper at the end of 12 years of education that is almost meaningless because it's a participation trophy, it is a certificate of attendance, and we are not keeping the promise. So that kids who leave K through 12 education, the Boston Globe did a series on valedictorians who are not even capable of taking college-level courses and have been struggling in the current system. We're not doing enough now, we need to be doing more. But moving forward, the idea that we are going to fly blind and hope based on vibes that our kids are going to be ready for the jobs and the economy of the future, what is going to happen to workforce in the Commonwealth. We as parents are not just here for that moment that we get to be handed that diploma, or our child is handed that diploma. We have to worry about whether or not kids can get to college, whether they can take those college level courses, because if you don't, you have to take remedial courses. You can't pass an aptitude test to get to become an apprentice in the IBEW. You have to have math skills, reading skills, proficiency in these things.
Respond. Go ahead.
So, this one is a really important talking point, Keri. The reason Massachusetts is number one has nothing to do with the MCAS. That's a snapshot in time. It's a data point. It is because we have a highly educated workforce. Educators have to get licensed. They have to get their master's within 5 years. They have to get recertified every 5 years. There is a rigorous evaluation process, and the reason that we are number one is because of this highly educated workforce. Students, GPA, and a rigorous coursework is a stronger indicator than a one-time test score.
You know what I wonder about, too, is I'm old enough to remember that before the MCAS, urban schools and schools that dealt with kids of color, English as a second language, kids with disabilities, were doing a horrible job. I talk about coming from one, in educating their kids. You know, the Wellesleys didn't have to worry much about because they also have wealthy parents. But one of the good things, features of the graduation requirement, is that if you don't pass the test, then you get to take the test 4 times again during high school. You get intense help passing the test, and you can also take it again after high school, as you know. So if you prevail, what happens to those kids that don't pass the test? Is that intense tutoring and help going to continue, or is that out the window?
Well, because the test score will no longer be the metric. The test only measures 43% of the standards, right? And so I like when we talk about the opportunity, because for some, they leave public schools and go to private schools and Catholic schools because they don't have to meet that metric, right? So what will happen is we will defang the high stakes of this snapshot in time. The data will be used for what it was meant to all along, and we will allow students the opportunity to, and real quick, but one of the students
So hold on, this is important. So they're not going to get that extra help at the 4th test?
Of course they get that extra help, but
so
it won't be.
You've written that into
all
the deal?
Standards. It's to all the standards. Kids get this extra help all the time. But what happens is, if you're that student, like one of the ones in our commercials, who misses it by 1 point as a freshman, her biology, she couldn't take the course that she wanted. She was denied it. She had to take a remediation course. She missed it again by 1 point. Finally, her junior year, she does pass it. But her best friend talks about the low self-esteem. This was a student who had a B average. But she lost 2 years of high school instruction based upon what she wanted to do for a pathway.
Okay. You know, before Keri responds, I'm sorry. You want to
I was just going to say, I was concerned about what happens for children who don't pass that they get just graduated, and then where do they go to get that education?
We should add, Keri, before you respond, just a little fact insertion here. Roughly 700 kids per year have their graduation held up. So we're talking roughly 1% of the seniors in the state. Keri, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, so a couple of things. I was actually part of the last generation just before MCAS was mandatory. And watching what happened to kids in my class who were passed along, who were functionally illiterate, who couldn't get out of the first semester of Bunker Hill Community College, because I went to school in Somerville, and watching how their lives played out, because they were handed a diploma. We were said that you're ready to go. They were not ready to go. They couldn't even get into a trade program. Those were not promises kept. A lot of those kids passed away from substance abuse and issues of poverty and a whole host of issues. The reason why we are number one in the nation for education is because we assess. We look for the inequities and we course correct. We cannot do that without data. We cannot just guess and based on vibes decide how we are going to allocate resources. And this has been an ongoing conversation. What I really want to bring up is the fact that, again, it is 700 kids that do not successfully pass the MCAS as a graduation requirement. That is not a punishment. That is a call to action. Those are kids that need resources, that we need to remediate, that need help, that need assistance. This is data that's actionable for us, that we should be actually helping those kids out.
Keri, I want to get to something. Deb, can you raise your mic about an inch a little bit? Just perfect. That's great.
that?
You know, a minute ago, Deb, and we're talking to Deb McCarthy, who's the vice president of the Mass Teachers Association. She wants you to vote yes on question 2. Keri Rodrigues is the founder of the National Parents Union. She wants you to vote no. Deb a minute ago said a critical thing, quoting, is rigorous coursework. Let me read to you from the Center for State Policy Analysis at Tufts, who I think does the best job of analyzing fairly both sides of this question. Let me read to you. Most states base their graduation standards on course requirements rather than test scores. So if the vast majority of states, who I assume care about their kids as well, have determined that, I'll use Deb's words, rigorous coursework, or Evan Horowitz, who runs the center, course requirements rather than test scores, it's working for them. Why shouldn't it work for us?
It's not solely based on coursework. There's also assessment data that is utilized.
But there's not a high-stakes graduation test in the vast majority of states.
It's a question of what we're talking about, high stakes. You know, and Deb was
talking
about...
What I mean by high stakes is you can't graduate if you don't pass it. That isn't the case in the vast majority of states.
So there are actually growing requirements. In Massachusetts, it's actually looked at as the gold standard in terms of our graduation requirement. I was actually just talking to the state chief of North Dakota the other day, who was laughing, saying Massachusetts is going to get rid of MCAS. We're actually adding to our state graduation requirement, adding things around cybersecurity and digital literacy and financial literacy, not taking things away. So the fact that we are the leader in the nation, #1 in the nation, and part of that is because of the assessment and the ability to say these are districts that are doing well. Here is how they resource these districts.
Do you think all those states, the majority of states that don't have that pass or fail or don't graduate, are they failing their kids in your estimation?
That pass or fail?
Those who don't have a graduation requirement test like we do, the vast majority of states, are they failing their kids?
I wouldn't say that they're failing their kids, but we really don't know. And that's the problem, is that we're graduating kids and we're throwing them into a competitive environment with all these other kids from other states, and then having the expectation that, hey, good luck to you, hope it goes well.
Just one thing on that, please.
Yeah, Deb McCarthy.
Well, thank you very much. Again, from the Department of Education from this morning on their webpage, Mass Core Pathway, students who take a challenging program of study like Mass Core in high school are more likely to enroll in college, forego academic remediation, and earn a college degree.
But Deb, if I may, you've read repeatedly from DESE's website. DESE is part of the Department of Education.
That's right.
The guy who runs the Department of Education is voting no and is advocating strongly for a no vote on this question.
Why I think that there's an issue here, because all of the information that shows that our students are being harmed by the high stakes of this requirement and that the alternative is effective is...
Where does DESE say that they're being harmed?
There's a fact issue here that I think we should straighten out. I don't know what they say on their website, but in a long piece in the Boston Globe, and it was from this organization.
Massachusetts Equity?
No, it's by a coalition member of this something. Yeah, the Voice for Academic Equity. But points out that Massachusetts is only one of 2 states, including Vermont, that do not require high schoolers to complete certain coursework, like the Mass Core. And the State Department of Elementary and Secondary Ed, DESE, only requires kids to pass the MCAS and not this required coursework, Mass Core. Only half of the students have that. Yeah, so that's just a fact check.
Well, I'm just telling you from their site, right, and all of the districts that do it. I actually was really surprised, because where I'm from in Hull, I thought everyone had to do the Mass Core. When you talk to people, I thought it was a standard. Then what you find out is it is an equity issue, that when you talk to some of these superintendents, because it's an unfunded mandate,
it's recommended. It's recommended.
It's strongly recommended. And so, once again, it's an equity issue, because taking these Mass Core pathway is more indicative of success
Deb,
than a
if I may,
one-time snapshot.
Keri wants to respond, but I wanted just to get a quick answer from you. I think we all know the answer. When you've quoted from the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, nowhere in their website do they say that the graduation requirement test harms students. Is that correct? That is
Do
correct.
they say that?
Yeah, they don't, right? I mean,
No,
you're quoting
no, no,
from.
no.
Okay, fine.
No, no, no.
What were you going to say, Keri?
So to this issue of harm, I think we have to address this. This has been a 20-year-long campaign from the Massachusetts Teachers Association to get rid of the MCAS exam.
Nope.
They have spent millions of dollars. They've stood up other organizations like Fair Test and Citizens for Public Schools, trying to convince us to opt out of the test. When you take a look at how parents and families actually feel about this test, what you need to look at, you don't have to take my word for it, you don't have to take her word for it, take a look at student participation data in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. How many parents make sure that their kid takes the MCAS exam every single year?
Why are the
in
polling,
most communities,
why are polling
it's
numbers,
98-99%.
We have 3 weeks to go. Well, early voting starts on Saturday, but we have 3 weeks to go to Election Day. Why are polling numbers showing a significant majority, I guess you could say, of people so far, which includes, I assume, a huge number of parents, actually support the elimination of MCAS?
Well, I honestly think that there has been a lot of manipulation in this campaign and distortion of the facts and the presumption that, hey, you know, if we get rid of MCAS, we're going to have something better. There is nothing better. This is going to lead to chaos. So when we talk about what we're going to do and what's going to happen, none of that is part of the ballot question. There is not a new statewide assessment. There's been a lot of
what does
rhetoric
happen?
around
That's a good
that.
question.
What
what
does
does
There's no plan.
So
I want to
many people
address the
vote-
chaos
no,
and
I
the
want
parents.
I want you to address, if you would, because time is short. What happens if people do vote
What's
yes?
happening right
what
now?
What follows?
Exactly what is happening right
Which
now.
is?
The incredible standards are in place. Students don't just pass the MCAS and then get a diploma. They have to meet the local metrics. It's a two.
Yeah, but
two
local
requirements.
metrics can be, as Marjorie said,
Can be, but they're
dramatically
not.
different from
But
one
they're
community.
not. They're
Well,
not.
I think
And
they
so the only
absolutely
difference
are.
is, and the parent thing really isn't fair, because we had a grassroots parents volunteering, collected 5,000 signatures in the South Shore, parents of students on IEPs they know exactly what the language is.
Okay, I gotta hold you
Hold
both.
on.
I gotta hold you. I'm sorry. Hold on.
In your home community
Keri,
of Hull last year, 100% of 10th graders took the MCAS exam.
Okay, I got to hold you both
So-
because we're almost out of time. Each of you have, let's start with you, Deb McCarthy. You have 30 seconds or so to sort of wrap up why you want people to vote yes on question 2.
Because it is time to stop tying the attainment of a high school diploma to a snapshot of a one-time metric. We know better. We need to do better. The grand bargain provided money, not enough. We have the standards, but we haven't looked at this assessment, and we are harming the same populations of students over and over and over again. And morally, it's wrong.
Why should people vote no? Wrap it up, if you will. Keri Rodrigues, please.
Well, I will tell you, as the child or a mother of a child with special needs who just last year passed the MCAS exam as a 10th grader while in a therapeutic high school in Massachusetts, kids like mine are capable of passing MCAS. Every child in Massachusetts is capable, and we should be honoring our commitment to getting them not just to proficiency but excellence, because we are not just preparing them to accept a diploma at the end of the stage. We need to prepare them to be competitive in a global economy and be ready for the jobs and economy of the future. And we are not doing this if we're just handing out report cards based on a vibe and hoping for the best.
Let
Our
her
kids
finish.
deserve
Let her
better
finish,
than that.
please.
This is a matter of education justice and keeping our promises, because the kids in Wellesley should not have to meet a higher standard than the kids in Lawrence. And this is how we make sure that all of the inequities that are within our system are addressed.
Keri,
is through this data.
does the Vote No side have a website?
They sure do.
What is it?
You're killing.
If you tell us in a minute,
Yes.
we'll announce
Yes
it.
on 2.
What's a yes?
Yes on 2.
Yes on 2.
Dot what?
It is incredible.
No,
Number
but-
2. The number 2, right?
Yes
on 2. Okay.
.org or .com?
I believe it's .org.
.org. Okay, fair enough. And
Yeah.
you'll let us know.
Yes,
and we'll announce
sorry
on the
about
air.
that. I'm blanking.
We appreciate
All right.
both your time. Thank you so much for
very,
being
very
here.
much for
Thank
coming
you.
in. We have been speaking with Deb McCarthy, Vice President of the Massachusetts Teachers Association, representing the Yes on Question 2 side, and Keri Rodrigues, founder of the National Parents Union, representing the No side. Thank you both very much for coming in. Up next, There's a video going around about our next guest claiming she is not currently in space. Well, don't trust the disinformation out there. We are glad to fact check that live here on Boston Public Radio. Astronaut Sunita Williams joins us via Zoom from the International Space Station. That is next on Boston Public Radio, GBH News 89.7, live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
Live, local, 3 hours a day, 5 days a week. Jim Braude, Marjorie Egan, Boston Public Radio. It's here on GBH Radio because of your support. Now's your chance to keep the conversation going. Give online at gbhnews.org or call 888-897-9424.
So here is the deal. This is one of my favorite enticements, as Marjorie calls it.
Enticements.
For $10 a month or $120 all at once, you get an annual online subscription to the New York Times. I would say if there was ever a time needed a thing like the New York Times, it is now. It's an annual online subscription to the New York Times, and you get it by calling 888-897-9424 or going to gbhnews.org. I'll say what I say every day. While the enticement, as Marjorie calls it, is great, I don't think that should be your primary reason for making a donation today. Your primary reason should be because you have heard 3 debates this week on ballot questions. By Friday, it'll be 5. Yesterday, the Attorney General was here. The Governor's going to be here to answer your questions from 1 to 2 today. Sunita Williams from Needham High School is zooming in from the International Space Station on. And Jenny Slate, great comedian author. She'll be with us on Friday, too. There's a lot of great content here that I hope you're willing to support with your dollars, whatever you can afford. And you do it by going to gbhnews.org or 888-897-9424.
Okay, let me tell you, I'm a little bit biased because my daughter does work for the New York Times, but let me tell you, there's nothing better than the cooking sites from the New York Times. Is it great?
There.
The Wirecutter, it's like the Consumer Reports.
I do it all the time.
If you subscribe to the New York Times, you get to look up what is the best multivitamin or what is the best sneaker, all these kinds of things. And you get those great recipes. You have a little recipe box, saves all your recipes. Plus, you get the great games. Wordle, the spelling bee, all those things. That is for $10 a month. You get an annual online subscription to the New York Times with a brand new website, $10 a month, $120 all at once. The number is 888-897-9424, gbhnews.org. As I always say, if we were not doing these occasional fundraisers, we would have commercials every day, which would be 5, 6, and 7 minutes long, which would be terrible. And it's bad enough having to listen to us do this a few times a year.
It's not horrible.
Sustaining membership at $10 a month. Well, it's not.
It's an opportunity for people who care about what they get from this station to participate in it by making a contribution.
As riveting as talking to somebody from outer space.
Well, that is true.
Let's be honest here, okay? But anyway, we need your help to do this kind of thing, to have the people zoom in from outer space and to have these debates like we just had, and to talk to the governor. That's right.
No zooming in from outer space if you do not make a contribution in the next 30 seconds.
That's right.
At
888-897-9424.
By the way, I know it's not outer space, but Jamie's writing us a note. We're being figurative. We know it's not outer space.
Okay, it's inner space.
It's space.
It's semi-space.
It's the International Space Station.
She's up there.
Okay, our number is
zero gravity.
888-897-9424, gbhnews.org. Welcome back to 89.7 Boston Public Radio. Jim Braude and Marjorie Egan. We are live on planet Earth at the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
Stand by. Here comes the call.
We're getting there.
That's our call. Go ahead. Station, this is Boston.
Station, this is Boston Public Radio. Do you hear us?
Got you loud and clear.
Oh, good.
And in any case, that is the voice of Sunita Williams zooming around planet Earth. Well, she's up in the International Space Station. I shouldn't say it. Sunny is a NASA astronaut and commander of Expedition 72 aboard the International Space Station, part of the Starliner crew, you all know this, whose original 8-day mission has become an 8-month mission. I don't want to say she's stuck up there, but she's there for a while, and she is stuck talking with us. And Sunny, not only do I want to welcome you, and she asked that we not call her Commander, but Sunny, I want you to know when I was in college, I had the exact same hair that you do now. Is that incredible?
Yeah.
I love it. Look at her hair.
This is a great picture.
Jim, hi, Marjorie.
Hello.
Hi there, Sunny.
We are so thrilled to talk to you, and I do love your hair. That's what zero gravity does. You don't have to worry about curls or brushes or anything else, right?
It's got a lot of body, and I like it, and it's a free card to be a little bit wild, so it's good. I like it.
So, Sunny, when we first heard, and I remember a while ago, that you were not coming home in 8 days, that you were going to be coming home in 8 months, I thought, oh my God. But you're a trained person, and I'm not. But I do wonder how it felt watching the Boeing Starliner head back to Earth with you not on it. What was that like?
Yeah, that's a really good question. It hits at the emotion part of the whole equation, right? So we knew as the summer was progressing on that there was a lot of discussions going on, and our fate was going to be decided. So it sort of played out slowly, and the decision finally came, and I think we were ready for it, just because it took a little while to get there and get the data and try to understand exactly what the problems were. But just like you hit on, when you see your ship flying away, it's a little heart-wrenching, and knowing that, that's what we trained to do, that's what we were supposed to do, and that's where we wanted to be in that spacecraft coming home. But, the decision was made, and it was a great decision. We stand by our leadership for asking everybody their opinions and making sure we had all the T's crossed and I's dotted to make sure we made the right decision. And so 8 months, it's okay. We're professional astronauts. We were trained for every contingency to live up here, so we're here.
By the way, it was a huge disclosure, Sunny, by Marjorie a minute ago that she is not an astronaut. All of us thought she was until a couple of minutes ago. Wow,
That's right.
That is incredible. Sunny, I don't know if you can turn around. Not only am I looking at you, but I'm looking at the sky behind you. What do we see behind you through the craft?
Yeah, we're over the Atlantic Ocean, and I sort of wish we were talking about maybe 10 minutes ago. We flew right over northern New England.
Oh.
It was a little cloudy, but I was mentioning to my friends and all the peepers out there, the trees are starting to turn reddish. It's not so green. Cape Cod was clear as a bell. It's where my sister and her kids live, so it was beautiful. But right now we're over the Atlantic, and we'll be coming up on Africa before too long.
We're talking to Commander Sunny Williams. Sunny, I've heard a few interviews with you, and I love when I hear you talk about how much little Sunny Williams cared about science and how much it meant to you. We talk a lot on the show about how, I don't know if it's a movement, but there is a move away from science in large parts of the United States, whether it was COVID, whether it's climate. How much does that worry someone like you who does what you do and who grew up loving the field?
I'm not really entirely worried, because I think all we can do is show people what science can do. And living up here on the International Space Station, launching people and rockets to space, to go live here, to right below me exercising in space, to talking to you while we're orbiting the planet 17,500 miles an hour. And when we could bring all that back home to people, they realize that there's science behind it all and the importance of it, and I think people want to get involved. So in my mind, the best thing we could do is be good ambassadors, good role models, and get more people involved and wanting to, discover, explore, and that's how we get them back.
So when you're not working up there, you mentioned exercising in space.
She ran a marathon on a treadmill, by the way, the
right.
Boston Marathon.
Yeah, you can run on a treadmill, and then I would assume you have some leisure time. I mean, can you watch like TV, Housewives of New York or something? I mean, what do you do when you're not working?
Yeah, there's a lot of things. We have folks who are behavioral health folks who make sure that, we have communications with our family and friends at home. We also have some favorite TV shows, particularly when I'm working out. All Creatures Great and Small was one of my favorites that I watch an episode while I'm riding the
You're
bike.
welcome.
That's us.
I listen to a bunch of TED Talks when I'm on the ARED, so that's always good. You learn a little bit there. So yeah, there's a lot of other entertainment up here that we have through our computer system and great support people on the ground who make sure we have things that we like. I personally write a journal while I'm up here as in part of my spare time, and look at the view. You take a lot of pictures because you're up here checking out home and then checking out just real cool formations of clouds, of water, ice. It's just so much to do, actually. I've never been bored while I've been on the space station.
How many hours have you engaged in spacewalks, Sunny Williams?
I've been really lucky. On my first flight, we were putting together this amazing space station. So that construction work, as I call it, was 4 spacewalks, and my second flight was a little later, and a couple things broke outside, so we had to go out and do some repairs. So I've had 7 spacewalks, about 50 hours of spacewalking.
Can you describe, and maybe you can't, can you describe the feeling when you leave the spacecraft and we've all seen these incredibly beautiful, striking moments. What does that feel like when you're the person doing it?
Well, we train a lot for these spacewalks, and there's a lot of people who are invested in it because it's very, expensive equipment outside. And if we go outside, we're risking everybody's life, these 2 people's lives to go out there and do that in their own specific spacecraft, their space suits, right? So we want to make sure we get it right. So I think the biggest thing on our minds, each of us, is like, okay, do I know everything that I'm supposed to do? Am I communicating correctly? Am I ready to go and do the job? And I don't want to mess it up. That's the part of the first emotion. But I'll tell you, a 6-hour spacewalk, I think you run through the gamut of every emotion a human can have. You're hot, you're cold, you're crushing it, you're doing everything right, and then something that you didn't expect goes wrong, and then you're beating yourself up because that didn't go right. And then you have to go to the bathroom, and then then it's cold, and it's hot again. You go through the whole thing, and I've noticed that each time that I've come back in, it felt like I was skiing the whole day. Like that after ski feeling when you get done and you just sort of like chill out. It's just sort of every piece of energy just comes out of you at the end of it. But while you're doing it, you're on cue. My mom sort of said, like, it took me a little while to get out the airlock because I was gathering some equipment. She goes, "Did you get stuck in there?" And I'm like, "No, I didn't get stuck in there. I was making sure I had all my stuff together to get ready to go." It's important work, Mom.
Well,
so it's every emotion I think a human can have.
We should mention your mom and dad are in Falmouth, I believe, right? And you spent many years in Needham, where Sunita L. Williams Elementary School is named after you. You've got a thing going on with the kids there. What's that about?
Yeah, that's pretty cool. That was I think the hugest honor of my whole life, having an elementary school named after you. Like, whoa, this is nuts. But, it was Hillside, and then it moved to an area where it wasn't on a hillside, so it needed a new name. And the superintendent, Dan Goodicants, called me up and said, hey, there was a vote, and we decided to have your name on the school. Will you accept it? And another astronaut friend of mine, Kevin Ford, goes, "I'm not sure you should. Usually those names are people who are dead." but I said, well, this is such an amazing honor. Of course, I'll accept it. And, Needham is my hometown. It happens to be the Needham Rockets. I'm not sure if you guys know that or not, right? So it's just appropriately named. So I've been back there since, I've been there after the groundbreaking, and then when it opened up. And then I try to go every year just to talk to the kids. There was a big dedication in 2019, and trying to go, and hopefully one day I'll be able to spend a week and give a little space course to maybe the 4th or 5th graders before they graduate from that school.
That is the voice of Commander Sunny Williams. She's zooming in to us from the International Space Station. A lot of people are texting in, Sunny, asking, can you vote? We know the answer, but they don't. Can you, and how do you do it?
Yeah, there's a couple of us up here who will definitely be here, Americans, to vote in November, and so all of us have written in through our postal service to ask for permission to vote, absentee voting. And we actually have a voting booth up here. We're going to put that together, and we will vote, and our votes will come down through our space network. and they'll all be counted. It's a civic duty. It's the right thing to do. So yes, we're all going to vote while we're up there.
Now, I was going to ask you about the food. Like, what are you having for lunch today?
So great question. So the food, at one point, someday we'll be able to fly you around and show you everything. But the food our kitchen is pretty awesome. We have hot and temperate water, and also then a refrigerator. So if you want to make cold drinks, you put this temperate water in there, put it in the refrigerator. Hot drinks, you put hot water in, and we have coffee, we have tea, we have cocoa, all sorts of, flavored drinks like lemonade and apple cider. But for lunch, I had chicken strips with salsa and on a tortilla and a side of broccoli au gratin. So the food is pretty good. It's a pretty good selection. All the different types of things: breakfast, dinner, sides, vegetables, soups. So we have a lot of food up here. I will say, since Butch and I have been up here as extra people, we've been eating through a lot of the food. The space station program has been great to make sure that we're all well fed. But we've been eating through a lot of food.
Speaking of Butch,
we're getting a resupply in the end of October.
I hope so. Do you two like each other? And what happens when you're stuck in one of those things with somebody you don't like? I'm serious. Come on.
An astronaut spat.
How about it?
So, I'll just say this. Butch is from south of the Mason-Dixon line. I'm from north of the Mason-Dixon line. Somehow we get along pretty well together. We're a good duo. We capitalize on each other's strengths and skills. And so, yes, of course, my life depended on him. His life depended on me also to make the right decisions while we were in the Starliner spacecraft. While we're up here, if we end up getting to do a spacewalk, the same thing. Our lives are depending on each other. So yeah, we trust each other. He's got a great sense of humor. So and he's a great dad. I know his family, his wife and his two daughters. He's just a nice, all around nice guy. So yeah, we get along. I'm not sure how it would work if you didn't get along. We spent a lot of time training beforehand, a couple of years. For us, it was more like 4 or 5 years. And so that's how you get to know each other. The hot buttons, what the triggers the other guy has. And so you sort of try to avoid those, right? You don't want to instigate conflict. So, we're pretty symbiotic.
I do the opposite with Marjorie's hot buttons.
That's right.
Do you think, for everything I read about you, you seem like an incredibly humble person, which I sure as hell would not be if I were you. But so this is a tough question, I think, for someone who has that approach. What do you think you understand better about all of us than we understand about ourselves?
Looking back,
who haven't been where you've been.
Earth.
There must be some things, Sunita Williams.
I think the one thing I really get from being up here is we take life a little too seriously on Earth. We get aggravated with some of the littlest, stupidest things that really we shouldn't, because this is our one big planet. This is our one big place that we live. We don't really know if anybody else lives anywhere else. So we really should all just get along. And it's amazing to me when you look down at some of the areas where there's, potentially some conflict, or even just think back to home about traffic and people getting aggravated. It's so silly, honestly. We all just live on this planet, and we all should just get along.
Can I ask you?
We can find compromise. We can find middle ground if you just stop and listen.
You're getting a lot of applause from the audience here, Sunita Williams.
We have a texter who's watching on YouTube and wants to know how you're affected by solar flares and whether you saw the northern lights, which we, oddly enough, were able to see here a few days ago, some of us, in Boston. What's the deal there, Sunny?
Well, Jim, why didn't you go see it? I'm curious, because it was incredible.
I had to walk 2 blocks, Sonny. I wasn't going to go there.
It was amazing.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
We see the northern lights and the aurora in the southern hemisphere as well when we have solar activity. Wow. And just recently, of course, we had this huge coronal CME. But anyway, I can't remember the acronym. Mass ejection. Thank you, Mike. Coronal mass ejection, which caused this amazing aurora. Usually it's green, but we started to see some red, not too long ago, but that thing was just incredible. It lit up our night sky with red and green. It was just awesome. And I see the pictures from the ground. I had asked my friends and family to send them this way too, because I wanted to see what you guys were looking at, and just spectacular. There are some dangers with all of that, of course. Things that are, there's radiation coming from the sun, right? So we have an increased risk of radiation while we're up here. We try to stay protected as much as we can. The space station has protective coating on it and stuff, but we do get a little bit increased amount of radiation than folks on Earth, of course.
Last thing from me, which really relates to the first thing I asked you about science, and I know you only have a minute left, Sunny Williams. The NASA budget as a percentage of the overall federal budget is lower than it's been in past years. Can you make the case for why NASA and what you and your colleagues do is so important to the people of this country?
Well, you alluded to it in the very beginning. It's just the importance of science, the importance of asking questions, the importance of trying to know and understand things that maybe we don't know now. We don't even know really what questions to ask. And I think when we live up in space or try to build systems and processes for being somewhere other than Earth's gravity, it makes you think outside the box. It makes you think and expand your horizons, ask the questions, and really try to find the answers. And I think it brings all of us together, back to the whole human aspect of our planet. We're all asking those questions. We're all here together, and we all owe each other the courtesy of those answers and those questions.
We'd love to meet you when you and Butch Wilmore are back in early next year, so we hope you'll do that. And we really can't thank you enough for your time today.
And I want to mention, Sunny, that we have a texter who just said, listening to Commander Sunny Williams was amazing. It made me feel proud of her and proud to be an American.
That's great.
So thank you very, very much for being with us. We so much appreciate it. That is great. We have a little gravity-free little stuffed animal there, right?
Safe return, Sunny Williams.
Thank
great
you,
to meet you. Thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It's a wildcat. You guys take care. We'll see you when we get back home.
I hope so. Be well.
It's a wildcat floating around up at the space station. Boy, that was a thrill. Okay, back to planet Earth. We've been speaking with Sunita Williams, a NASA astronaut. Spent a lot of her time in
From you and the Bach Center, presenting the Politics War Room podcast, live with political strategist James Carville, journalist Al Hunt, and guest Doris Kearns Goodwin, November 2nd at the Schubert Theater. More at bachcenter.org. And Cogita, committed to helping guide students and families to acceptance at their desired fit schools through holistic and humanistic approaches. More about their services and consultations at cogitaed.com. And The Cambridge Homes, a nonprofit, independent, and assisted living residence with a tradition of service, working with Cambridge area seniors for more than 130 years. You can learn more at thecambridgehomes.org/tradition.
Trusted. Local. News. You're listening to 89.7 WGBH, HD1 Boston, online at gbhnews.org. GBH News with NPR. What matters to you.
I'm Jim Browdy, head on Hour 2 of Boston Public Radio, live from the Boston Public Library. We took a brief pause from arguing about MCAS to talk with astronaut Sunny Williams, live from the International Space Station.
National disasters, more frequent and severe now because of climate change, and more dangerous now because of conspiracy-driven death threats. We'll talk about it with her. And former chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff under Trump, Mark Milley, called his former boss fascist to the core. Will that matter to voters in November? All that ahead, hour number 2, Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH, live from the Boston Public Library.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Lakshmi Singh. The race for president is as close as it could possibly be, and NPR's Domenico Montanaro reports that Democrats are getting nervous about its direction.
For the first time since Vice President Kamala Harris got in the race, former President Donald Trump has taken the lead in an average of the polls in the 7 most closely watched states. Harris had narrow but consistent leads in the blue wall states of Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania, but those have evaporated. In the 4 Sunbelt states, Arizona, Nevada, Georgia, and North Carolina, the candidates remain tied, with Trump gaining in the last week. Everything is within the margin of error, and polls are not votes. So what the campaigns are focused on now is getting as many of their supporters to vote now as early voting is kicking off for millions of people in the coming days. Domenico Montanaro, NPR News, Washington.
Residents with felonies on their record are now clear to vote in Nebraska. The state's Supreme Court is ordering the Secretary of State to enforce a state law that restored the voting rights of thousands of convicted felons who've served their sentences. Many live in an Omaha area district that carries one electoral vote. That's significant in a close race because the district voted for the Democratic candidate in 2008 and 2020. Israel says it allowed 50 truckloads of food, water, medical supplies, and shelter equipment into northern Gaza today. This comes after the U.S. threatened to cut military aid to Israel unless it boosts aid to Gaza. Here's NPR's Daniel Estrin.
It's a sign that Israel is slightly easing its blockade of northern Gaza after UN aid agencies said Israel was blocking food and aid from reaching the area for the past 2 weeks during intensified shelling, airstrikes, and armed clashes. A top UN aid official for Palestinians in Gaza said Israel was leaving civilians with no choice but to flee the area or starve. The U.S. Secretaries of State and Defense warned Israel this week that the U.S. could cut off military aid to Israel unless it increases aid to Gaza over the next month. The U.S. is demanding at least 350 truckloads of aid to Gaza a day. Daniel Estrin, NPR News, Tel Aviv.
The International Energy Agency says the switch from fossil fuels to cleaner energy is not happening fast enough to meet climate goals. NPR's Jeff Brady reports.
The International Energy Agency's annual World Energy Outlook shows fossil fuel consumption peaking by the end of this decade and renewable energy growing fast, especially in China, which is the world's largest producer of carbon emissions. But Kelly Trout with Oil Change International says that's still not fast enough.
What we actually need to see to preserve a livable climate is for fossil fuel use to peak immediately and decline rapidly to 2030. And what's needed to get there is much stronger government action.
The next UN Climate Summit happens next month in Azerbaijan.
It's NPR News.
Good afternoon. With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro. The Chelsea nonprofit La Collaborativa and Mass General Brigham are holding a ribbon cutting on a new free health clinic in that city today. We have more from GBH's Mark Hers.
Gladys Vega, head of La Collaborativa, says the clinic continues their mission of offering comprehensive help, especially to new immigrants for whom the organization is often a first stop. She says she's particularly proud of a focus on preventative health, which will be integrated with their food pantry.
We monitor your eating habits. We incorporate some of the healthier items for your diet. And also, when there's a need for referral, the doctor can say, you know what? You need to go to MGH to see a doctor, and I'm going to make this appointment for you. And everything is free of charge.
An emphasis on healthy eating aligns with two areas of focus at the new clinic: how to prevent and manage high blood pressure and diabetes. In Boston, I'm Mark Hers, GBH News 89.7.
Parts of Massachusetts could see the first frost of the season overnight, and with that comes a new AccuWeather forecast for the upcoming winter that predicts much more snow than last year's extremely mild winter in Boston. Weather prognosticators at AccuWeather are predicting a series of meteorological twists and turns that could bring bursts of heavy snow and blasts of bitterly cold air. Meteorological winter begins on Sunday, December 1st, and astronomical winter begins on December 21st. Of course, that's the date of the winter solstice and the shortest day of the year. 52 degrees in Boston. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Fisher Investments. As a fiduciary, Fisher Investments is obligated to act in their client's best interest. Learn more at FisherInvestments.com. Investing in securities involves the risk of loss. This is NPR.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you. And MIT Federal Credit Union, helping members achieve their financial goals with savings account options, including high-yield money market accounts. Memberships open to the general public. More at mitfcu.org, federally insured by NCUA. And Mass General Brigham Health Plan, ranked #1 in member satisfaction among commercial health plans in Massachusetts by J.D. Power for the second consecutive year. Details at mgbhp.org/everyday. And Willow Hill School on a 26-acre state-of-the-art campus in Sudbury, offering 6th through 12th graders embedded social, pragmatic, and executive functioning support in all classes and a range of extracurriculars. WillowHillSchool.org.
Hey, it's Jim Browdy. I am Marjorie Egan. Welcome to hour number 2 of Boston Public Radio. I don't know how we're going to top that, Jim, talking from the International Space Station. But nonetheless, we're forging ahead. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library in Copley Square, and we are streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. GBH and the New England, what is
Public
it called?
Media.
Thank you. New England Public Media was hosting a debate tomorrow night at 7 o'clock between Senator Warren and her GOP challenger, John Deaton. It's going to be televised on Channel 2. Hello again, Jim.
Hey, and we should say in exactly an hour, the governor will join us for an hour to answer our questions and yours. Earlier in the show, we heard from both sides of ballot question 2, which would, if a yes vote prevails, eliminate the MCAS as a graduation requirement. For the next 20 plus minutes, we're going to open the lines and get your thoughts at 877-301-8970. You can call or text how you're going to vote and why. Do you believe the MCAS as a graduation requirement is a necessary measure to ensure that the state has some way to measure one district against another so that the same standards apply? Or should local districts be given more control to determine what's necessary for their own kids to graduate? The number is 877-301-8970. Two other things. The vote no side did not have their website handy. We now have it. The vote yes side gave us the wrong website, so we should do both of them. The Vote No website, and Nicole, please listen to make sure I don't make a mistake. Vote No question 2, the number 2.org. And the yes side is yes on question 2, the number 2, ma.com. Those are the two websites if you want to check out what the arguments of both sides are. And if you go to gbhnews.org, I don't know quite yet, but later today, the 3 ballot questions where we've already had a debate, those discussions and that video will be available for you to check out. 877-301-8970.
So we're going to take your calls and texts on the MCAS. Let's start with Amanda calling from someplace in Massachusetts. Hi, Amanda.
Hi, thanks for taking my call.
Of course.
I'm a big fan of your show, and I've never called in.
Oh, well, thank you.
Excuse me if I sound a little nervous.
Sound great.
Thanks. I am voting yes on question 2. I'm a mom of a student with special needs, as well as an advocate for kids. And I have another son who's in private school. And I think my issue is that it seems right now that the way that it's set up is that the kids are bearing responsibility for districts that aren't implementing the math curriculum. So earlier, one of the speakers noted that only 50% of the districts are following the math frameworks curriculum.
Yeah, Mass Core.
And it seems that in the Mass Core, thank you. And it seems that instead of placing, I guess, the burden on the student, I'm not sure why we as a state aren't compelling the districts to follow this curriculum and ensure that all students are getting the same education. It seems like a high stakes, as they were saying, it seems like a high stakes penalty, if you will, for kids who aren't passing the MCAS and then they aren't able to graduate.
You know, Amanda, can I just say,
Sure.
I'm really glad you raised that because I have the same question. And we have the Secretary of Education joining us. Can we be told when that is? I forget. He'll be on for the first time with us, I think maybe even tomorrow. I'm not sure. I'll let you know in a minute. It is tomorrow. Thank you. He'll be joining us, Secretary Tutwiler. And I think that's a really important question to be asked.
You know, Amanda, what's an even more important question if you ask me? Why half of Massachusetts schools, when half of kids in 3rd grade are not proficient readers, are using a low level of reading skill tests? And you know, I have to wonder whether the kids that are struggling in 3rd grade continue to struggle all the way through school because we're not teaching them reading the right way. And Max Page has said to us that he's opposed to demanding this change in curriculum that would be a life changer. And the kids in Mississippi are doing better in reading than we are in Massachusetts. So I think that's another question, too. There's a big
Amanda, make sure you listen tomorrow. And that was a great first call. Make another one.
There's a big feeling that there should be local control. And I think that's one of the problems with Mass Core.
But MCAS as a graduation requirement is not local control. So why is that okay mandated from the state, but curriculum mandates are not okay. I don't understand the distinction.
Well, because I think it's important. When you look at the curriculum, it really matters. You want to get 4 years of English and math. You want to get...
No, you're missing my point. That's fine.
What?
Why doesn't the state mandate to cities and towns? I know you said they're reluctant to do it. They're mandating that MCAS is a graduation requirement.
Well, they probably should. They probably should. But we see what's happening to the one thing that statewide that people want. I mean, they're trying to get rid of the one statewide measure so that you know if you're in a poor school system, you're not getting screwed because you don't live in Wellesley.
877-301-8970 is the number. Will, you're in Somerville. You're next on Boston Public Radio. Thanks for calling. Hi.
Hi, thanks for taking my call.
Sure.
So I'm a former middle school teacher. I'm voting yes on one, or on two, rather.
Two, yep.
And I wanted to call in just because a statistic that keeps getting brought up in this debate, and it's a true statistic, is that 700 kids a year meet all their local graduation requirements, but then don't pass the MCAS, so they don't graduate.
I think it's the opposite, Will, that a lot of the kids that don't pass the MCAS do not meet their graduation.
No, the 700 number is, I think, what Will said. I'll look it up while you're talking, but go ahead, Margie.
It's about 1% of kids who would otherwise graduate every year, but I think the bigger thing is that, a lot of the kids who aren't passing MCAS just end up dropping out because, I taught in Springfield where there's a lot of English language learners. These are kids who come from elsewhere who often don't, who their first language isn't English. And they're usually very smart kids. In fact, once they learn English, they usually do better than monolingual students. But, understandably, the English MCAS is really difficult for them. And if you look at the DESE statistics, about 40% of English learners in high school drop out before graduating.
Well, let me ask you a question as a teacher, because this is the thing that really concerns me. They do offer the math and science and Spanish, by the way. The English is not it's in English, obviously. But what really concerns me, if you are an English language learner and you can't pass the MCAS in 10th grade, you're going to get intense help for other opportunities to pass the test in high school and even past high school. So that's what concerns me, that there's no plan to help these kids. And what's really tragic to me, to get out of high school as an English language learner and not know English well enough to function. Because where are you going to go, especially if you're a low-income kid, to learn that English?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a really valid concern. And I will say, first of all, is that my wife is an English language. She teaches ESL or taught ESL. And the English, ESL teachers in the Commonwealth are amazing people, and they work so hard, and they do get really good results. But they
won't get that. They won't get that opportunity though without the MCAS.
I don't know that that's true though, because a friend of mine is a high school teacher, and he was telling me about a student who came to the U.S. as a senior from El Salvador, and she's very smart. She speaks, she's passing all of her classes, but can't pass the English MCAS, so she's doing her senior year a second time because the MCAS graduation requirement is keeping her from graduating.
Will, can I ask you a quick question? You're a former teacher. Why are you not a teacher?
I went to law school.
Oh, sorry to hear that as a former lawyer. Will, thank you. Good luck. By the way, he is right about that number. I'm reading from the Center on whatever it is at Tufts. For the remaining 4% who struggle to get state sign-off for graduation, there are often other complications. Most kids who don't pass the MCAS also don't meet district requirements. That leaves 700 whose graduation is being held up by state standards. So that's the number. That's 1% of the senior class, of the 10th grade class, I'm sorry, or I guess ultimately seniors in Massachusetts.
And we should also point out that you can appeal to the state for this if you are if you're learning disabled or you have some kind of special need kind of thing, and you can also hand in a portfolio
to
demonstrate your
alternative
work.
pathways. That's true.
Yeah, Jay from New Bedford. What do you think, Jay?
Hey, Jay.
Hi, Marjorie and Jim. Thank you for taking my call.
Thank you.
I just wanted to make a couple of points with respect to the language learner situation.
Sure.
Yes.
So there's no most of the research on language acquisition states that it takes about 4 to 5 years to actually learn a language. right, to have the cognitive academic language proficiency to handle a language. Now, if you assume, let's pretend that a student comes from Haiti or comes from Cape Verde at the 10th grade level. I mean, what are we saying with about these children? I mean, in terms of requirements for graduation, it's not that you don't want them to, have the necessary skills to graduate, but the MCAS as a high-stakes requirement doesn't really do justice to them, because what we are effectively saying is that you want them in 2 years to learn to
Understood.
have cognitive
So what
command of the language that somebody from kindergarten gets.
That's an important point, Jay. So what does do justice to them? Obviously, it's not simply getting rid of the graduation requirement. What does do justice to them?
Well, I mean, my issue is not even having the MCAS, right? The issue is having the MCAS as a high-stakes graduation requirement, because, when these requirements were put in place, right, a portfolio system, a lot of states had the portfolio system, and the portfolio system would be much better in terms of gauging, the skill sets that the students develop over time, because it's unrealistic for you to say that a student in 2 years, from a language point of view.
Yeah, I'll ask you the same question, though, Jay, that I asked the teacher before. So if the MCAS's graduation requirement is eliminated, the person who's learning English, as you know, there's a lot of overcrowded. There's not enough of these classes. They're expensive. People can't afford them. They don't have time. They got jobs. They have an opportunity to get that intensive tutoring. Where are they going to get it? If they just are out of high school and they don't know English well enough to get a job. That's my concern.
Well, Marjorie, I'm going to tell you something. If you look at the discourse on language and language acquisition, look, I can give you 3 very quick points that will
real quick, because we're up against the clock, Jay.
Sure.
Real quick.
Look, if you look, myself, I'm a PhD now, and I was a language learner. And I know many people that have gone through the systems that we have without the high-stakes testing, and in the long run have been able to acquire English and transfer whatever skill sets they had from the native language.
Jay, we got to hold you there, only because we're way over and we have a ton of calls. And when we come, thank you, Jay. When we come back from the pledge break, we're going to ask everybody to be as tight and brief as you can so we can get to as many callers in the allotted time.
Yeah, we're talking about the MCAS. We're going to be right back after a quick pledge break. That is, you're listening to Boston Public Radio, broadcasting, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Sorry.
It's time to support Boston Public Radio on GBH. Listener contributions pay for the program and keep it on the air. You don't have to give much to make a difference. Please make a difference by giving now at gbhnews.org or by calling 888-897-9424.
Okay, we have, as we've said before, $10 a month or $120 all at once. You can get an online subscription to the New York Times with all those cooking recipes, what to cook this week with Wordle, the crossword puzzles, all those little games.
Yeah, Marjorie's cooking a lot of New York Times recipes.
I'm not, but I spend an awful lot of time on the word
Wordle,
games.
okay.
It's kind of pathetic.
Okay.
Well, I like the mini crossword. You know why? Because it's pretty easy. You can do that pretty fast and feel really great about yourself. So if you can't do the crossword, you do the mini crosswords. But you get all that, the videos, the blogs, and more, and you can sign up for, as I said before, the breaking news, food, travel, arts, culture, science, sports, and politics. That's for $10 a month. And we prefer, actually, the sustaining membership because it gives our budget people a chance to know how much we have to work with for the coming year. Normally, this would cost you $180, but $10 a month will get it for you here.
What's the number?
The number is 888-897-9424, gbhnews.org.
I want to read a couple of comments from people who are not only nice enough to make a contribution, but to take time to make comment. Louisa in Centerville says, when I grow up, even though I'm already grown up, I would like to be Jim and Marjorie. I love GBH and their show. I'd like to grow up to be Sunita Williams, let me tell you. Deirdre from Wellesley Hills, love listening to Jim and Marjorie as they keep listeners informed on all that's happening around the world. Enjoy all the guests. The public library, this is so true, has become a nice day out for people who visit. us in Boston. Intelligent conversation with humor, etc. So true. Come into this place. This is one of the great venues.
Tourist attraction.
Ever, by the way. It really is a great, great, great place. And just think of today, if you're deciding, I'm not sure whether I'm going to make a contribution or not, look at this week. 5 debates on 5 ballot questions. I know a hell of a lot more than I knew before the week start. The Attorney General for an hour, you can ask her questions. The Governor for an hour, you can ask her questions. Sunita Williams from the International Space Station. Jenny Slate, one of the great local comedians, even though she's internationally famous, from Massachusetts, will be with us on Friday. This is what you get. And I would argue if any of that appeals to you, this is a good time to call 888-897-9424 or go to gbhnews.org.
Here's another little nice note from an anonymous person in Uxbridge. Thank you, Jim and Marjorie, for providing some great comic relief during some very trying times. Seriously, though, I enjoy being informed with fact-based reporting while being entertained at the same time. So the number again, 888-897-9424, gbhnews.org.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy and Marge Regan. We're live at the Boston Public Library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. We had a debate between the yes and no sides on question 2, which would eliminate MCAS as a graduation requirement for high school kids. By the way, it doesn't eliminate MCAS. It eliminates as a graduation requirement. We have so many calls and texts. We'd ask you to be really tight. We'll try not to follow up too much, and we'll get as many of you as we can. Ram in Uxbridge, welcome. Hi.
Hey, good afternoon. How are you?
You too. Thank you.
Be brief.
Sure.
I just want to preface this. I was a second language learner when I arrived in 8th grade. By 10th grade, I was in honors English. So with a lot of hard work, you can do it.
Great.
I'm voting no on question 2. And the reason why is, like you just said, they're keeping the test. So why are they keeping the test if they abolish it? We need some kind of a way to know that these kids that are graduating actually know how to do something. My wife is a teacher, and admin is constantly pushing her to give kids passing grades. It's not allowed to fail kids. It's always a struggle to fail the child that's not holding up standards. We need some way for these kids to know that the kids that are graduating in Massachusetts know what the heck they're doing and are ready for the real world. And if we're repealing the requirement, why are they keeping the test?
Ram, thank you. Well, by the way, they're federally required to have the test, but you make wonderful points there. Ram, thank you very much for your call. 877-301-8970.
Let's go to, was that Ram in Uxbridge?
It was Ram in Uxbridge.
Okay, we are going now to, I don't know where we're going.
Sort of suspenseful, isn't it, because you don't know?
Okay, well, I can read some text in the meantime.
Do it.
Generally, if there are not standards, you have undeveloped education. Are we not trying to give everyone the same chance in life? Education has to be a foundation. And then we have a vote yes. MCAS pollutes school culture. The main point is everyone passes, but it is morphed into a school versus school competitive metric. It detracts from other aspects of good education, says Randy in Natick.
That's like the teaching of the test thing, which troubles me too. Mm-hmm. Ella and Wellesley, you're next on Boston Public Radio. Hi.
Hi, how you guys doing?
Great, thank you.
Good. So I'm a student, actually. I just graduated from Wellesley High School in June of 2024.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And I was also the student member on the Board of Elementary and Secondary Education from 2023 to 2024.
Wow.
And I feel very strongly about voting no on this question because I take particular issue what Deb McCarthy said earlier on in your segment about if, people vote yes on this and this question passes, that it wouldn't eliminate a universal statewide standard, but it would. And frameworks that the department implements aren't required to be used by teachers in their curriculum. The graduation standards in Mass Corps aren't required to be implemented by local school committees. If people vote yes on this and it passes, you leave the kids in, say, I'll take Deb's metaphor, in whole, with no guarantee that their education is equally as high quality, equally as fulfilling as, say, my education that I got in Wellesley.
Ella, what are you doing with yourself? Quickly, what are you doing?
I'm currently at Hobart and William Smith Colleges in Geneva, New York, which is technically where I'm calling in from.
Great.
And I'll tell you, I feel wildly prepared by my Massachusetts public high school education, and I'm incredibly proud of it. And I see how excellent it was now at college with students from across the country. And I attribute that to the skills that the MCAS reinforces. And if I graduated without those skills, I wouldn't be where I was today.
Ella, we might want to talk to you again. Can you stay on hold? One of our colleagues
Absolutely.
will take your phone number. We'd love to stay in touch with you. Thank you very much for the call.
I mean, to me,
No problem. Thanks, Jim.
she just encapsulated the whole thing. You don't have to worry about this in Wellesley, in Brookline, where you have rich parents and who can afford all these tutors, and you can have, and one of the reasons we have such great schools in Massachusetts is because we have a lot of very well-educated people here. We have a very brilliant group of people, a very rich state as compared to other states. The problem is the poor districts, and that's
why do you think teachers unions who represent kids in poor districts, like, for example, the Boston Teachers Union, think we should get rid of the requirement?
Because I think that they
don't care about the kids?
No, I don't think that. I think they do care about the kids. I do not think they like accountability, and I think that's what this is about. They're worried that their kids are going to do poorly and they're going to be blamed because they are in poor districts, and I think that's not fair. If you had kids coming from poverty and a lot of issues that are difficult, but you can't tell me for a second that this is not going to hurt kids that are in poor urban school districts.
Megan and Revere, welcome to the show. Hi.
Hi, how are you?
Great, thank you.
I'm Megan from Revere, but I'm actually, interestingly, originally Megan from Wellesley. So I have a little counterpart to Ella over there.
Yep.
I was part of the original MCAS testing cohort, like way back in the day when they were testing it for all the grades. So I'm old. But I'm also a special ed kid, and a lot of what people were saying was about the resources that are available to people to graduate school for the MCAS. If you don't pass 4 times, you can take the class after pass it. SPED kids don't know that. SPED kids don't have the resources. And it's
SPED being special education kids. Good. I'm sorry.
Get there. Yeah, sorry.
Good. That's okay.
Yeah, special ed kids. Like, we need layers of support, and there's such a lack of resources and information about resources, especially for the underprivileged kids. Like, growing up in Wellesley, I was lucky I had a psychologist dad that could get me into special ed. But he had to fight for it. Even in the rich communities, you have to fight for those resources, and they're not available for kids to retake the MCAS after they are supposed to graduate or to get that tutoring support.
Megan, we're going to broach this with the secretary tomorrow, too. That was a fine call. Thank you for making it. We appreciate it.
Megan.
Thanks so much. Where do you want to go?
Vote yes. Oh, I read that one already. Joe from Bellbrook, is there a standardized testing requirement to graduate from college? I don't remember there being one. We rely on tests and grades. I don't think that would be the same as for high school, he says.
Let's get another one in. Can we? Are you about to read another one? I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Linda in Falmouth, hi.
Just a quick point. I'm a former ESL teacher at a large district. And Marjorie, you are naive in thinking that these poor districts give supplemental help to their the kids that don't pass. I can tell you they don't. They flounder, and then they give them a certificate of completion at the end of their time in high school. So why do you think we're in this predicament? Because Springfield, Worcester, Lawrence, they don't have the resources to give supplemental help. So that's my point.
Thank you,
Okay,
Linda.
well, I know enough people from my hometown that to disagree with that, Linda, but that's okay. Here's Mike from Milton. I was a volunteer in the Boston school system for the 10th grade MCAS. Using the practice test, it was easy to assess which concepts a student was weak on. I don't believe these kids would work to learn these concepts if graduating wasn't a risk, and all my kids ultimately passed the test.
We're done.
We're done.
By the way, again, all of these debates that we were able to do and will continue to do through the end of the week are available on gbhnews.org. You can watch the whole thing and learn some things, we hope.
Okay, coming up right after the news, our national security expert, Juliette Kayyem. She's going to talk about hurricane disinformation, FEMA workers feeling threatened with death threats, and Donald Trump suggesting he's the father of IVF, that is, and the military should go after his enemies. That's next on Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH.
Think about it. For 3 hours every day, you get to hear thought-provoking conversations on local, national, and international issues for free. It only happens with your support, so please support your Boston Public Radio listening by calling 888-897-9424 or giving online at gbhnews.org.
Okay, the number to donate is 888-897-9424, gbhnews.org. That guy just said that. Why'd you say it, Jim? I have no idea. But I have good news for you. Our favorite thing is in place until 1 o'clock, which is 29 minutes from now, a match. That means for every dollar you give, a generous group of Beacon Circle patrons donate an additional $1. I'll do the math for you. You give $10 a month or $120 at once to get this annual online subscription of the Times. It becomes $20 a month or $240. You give $1,000, it becomes $2,000. you double your money, which is huge. So if you're contemplating giving and hadn't yet, now's a really good time for the next 28 minutes. 888-897-9424, gbhnews.org.
Ipswich, who says, thank you for your up-to-date, diverse...
Who is that? We didn't hear. Who's the person?
Beth Ann from Ipswich.
Yep.
Thank you for your up-to-date, diverse, and informative news programs. Here's Joan from Northampton, New Hampshire. We have loved GBH for 40 years. Wow. How about that one? And David from Goffstown, New Hampshire. My wife and I are huge fans of NPR and Jim and Marjorie's show. Thank you very much. That makes us feel very good. As we said before, we do this in lieu of commercials because we are listener supported here. More than 70% of our budget comes from the generosity of listeners like you. They give $5 a month, $10 a month, $15 a month, or they give $10 a month and get the New York Times subscription. They get all the newsletters, the games, the food, travel, culture, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So here's the deal. The number is 888-897-9424. Operators are standing by, Jim. Or gbhnews.org is how you can give online. And we do have this very generous match from this group of Beacon Circle, patrons who will basically, you give $100, that will pay for $200. They'll double the money.
They will.
What they will do. So it's 888-897-9424, gbhnews.org.
Now, Marjorie, during the break, asked me not to mention this, but I figure I have to tell the truth. We learned a few minutes ago, Sunny Williams will not be returning to Earth unless we meet our goals today at 888-897-9424, gbhnews.org. Okay, that's not true, but what is true is this woman called in from the International Space Station to talk to you and us. I'd say that's some value. I was really inspired. I thought she was terrific, a courageous soul who's dedicated her life to service to this country with a great sense of humor, a great thing about her. That's what you get here. You're going to get the governor in exactly 30 minutes for an hour. Anybody here at the studio, anybody who's got a phone can call her, text her, talk to her, ask her a question. I think that's of some value. If you agree, I think it's of great value. 888-897-9424 or gbhnews.org. Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. We're broadcasting live at the library, streaming at youtube.com/gbhnews. The governor, as I said, will join us a little bit after 1 o'clock, right after the news. And we also want to let you know, tomorrow night, GBH, with our partners, New England Public Media and Western Mass, will be doing a debate, the final one between Senator Warren, our GOP challenger, who's joined us a few times, John Deaton. We're joined now by national security expert Juliette Kayyem. Juliette is a former Assistant Secretary for Homeland Security under President Obama and the faculty chair of the Homeland Security Program at Harvard's Kennedy School of Government and a contributing writer for the Great Atlantic. Hello, Juliette.
Hello.
Hey there.
Hi, Juliette.
Everyone.
So you wrote a piece in the Atlantic talking about hurricane disinformation. What's going on?
So I noticed it early on coming out of North Carolina, and then it sort of came to a head with the hurricane in Florida, which was essentially this sort of purposeful entry of disinformation, not misinformation, which is not intended to hurt, it's just mistakes. Disinformation are lies put into the system, the noise, to tell people what is not true. And that is very harmful for, of course, disaster management, where truth is really all people have to hold on to. Some of these were, fake pictures and things like that of people struggling, whatever. Those are manageable. But then, sort of amplified by Donald Trump, it was about the resources available, the resources deployed to victims by the Biden administration, what they could have access to, and then one sort of really horrible lie, that FEMA would take your house if they didn't like, the damage. So then that compels people to stay put because they don't want to leave their house. And then by the end of the week, or at least by 2 days ago, the danger that raised for FEMA employees who are out in the field, that there was a story and an arrest now. A man was out hunting FEMA and presumably wanted to do harm to them. And, then they have to close out their offices that were meant to help victims. It's just a horrible cycle that's just, it lives in social media, amplified by Donald Trump, and then becomes a reality for some group of people.
So what do you do about it? I mean, we lived through a very similar thing in COVID.
Yeah.
And I would argue that we wouldn't have had 1 million dead. We would have had a lot dead, but a lot fewer than 1 million had there not been this crap, this and sometimes missed, but mostly disinformation for political gain from people. What do you do in that community that you work in, disaster relief, all that sort of thing?
It's going to be hard. It's going to be part. I think I've been thinking about this a lot. I don't know if I have a perfect answer. I think there's two. I say, it's audiences I'm speaking to. So once, of course, as emergency managers and the government sort of pushing back on those lies. So FEMA got its act together. It started to sort of had a rumors page. I would have called it a lies page. It is getting the right information out, not believing, I think we have a tendency to believe that, excuse me, that no one would believe this, but people do believe it, right? So you got to get out there with the right information. They want help. You get help from, and this was good, Republican governors and others who are pushing back on those lies. The second is, I think, as potential victims, we have to get smart about our, sort of, I would say, like water and food, about what we know before a disaster.
There should be a hotline. How about a hotline?
There's hotlines, there's websites, there's information being deployed through all sorts of stakeholders. It's not just FEMA. They go to the churches, they go to the synagogues, they go to the community centers, and they are getting this information out. But it's just, when this is not God, this is the person with a large megaphone. When Donald Trump amplifies the lies, it is very hard to push back.
There are two things. I think one of the most important things he said there was Republican governors doing their jobs, meaning all of those governors from Kemp in Georgia who countered, well, actually, he's said before that I spoke to Joe Biden.
And now Congress people,
But what was really damaging? I saw it. The other thing, because I am a believer that images stay with people a lot longer than words do. Ron DeSantis, for purely selfish political gain, twice has refused to join with Joe Biden when Joe Biden has come to Florida to try to help.
We are a nation.
Seeing two people who don't agree, a DeSantis and a Biden standing shoulder to shoulder, sends a wonderful message, I think, that you can trust this. We are going to help you.
I mean,
why are you making a face?
No, I'm saying
when he's not there,
has
his supporters are basically saying
I know,
he
but
doesn't trust the president.
He can't run again, and he's not going to be vice president or president. So he's gunning for to host a Fox News show.
Exactly, which is a problem.
That's all that it is, and it's horrible. And he will have to, live with the consequences. But his people also have to live with the consequences. But until this thing is decided on November 5th, it's not going to get better. And then, on the other side of this, if Harris wins, not my job, but somebody's job in that darn party to make sure that that Donald Trump is finally and decisively isolated. I don't know who's going to do that, but I know he says he's not going to run again. He's going to run again if he's still alive, if he still has a brain.
We're talking to Juliette Kayyem.
So Bob Woodward, who has a great track record of being right as a historian of the Supreme Court and presidencies and stuff, has another book out on Donald Trump in which he quotes Mark Milley, the former chief of staff.
And Biden.
Yes, and Biden. The Milley thing is he's calling Trump fascist to the core.
Yeah.
Milley apparently is worried that he may be court-martialed by Donald Trump should he win the election.
And Romney's saying the same thing, that Romney's worried about his kids.
Yeah.
I mean, look, you can worry only so much. I do consistently believe that Milley and John Kelly, who had been the chief of staff but is a general who had been Secretary of Homeland Security, that those voices have a lot of influence within the military, and why they're sort of whispering to Bob Woodward or making, off the cuff remarks that can't be attributed to them. We all know how they feel. Romney is trying to straddle this thing where he's like, I'm worried about my kids, and he's going to go after my kids, but I'm going to, write in my wife's name. I don't know how that's helpful. And so whatever you think about, I can't believe it, the Cheneys, Lynn and former Vice President Dick Cheney, history however history judged them for some conduct, including the war in Iraq, history will judge them well if because of their bravery of saying it's not an issue of the lesser of two evils. It is the issue now is America or not America.
Well, I agree with that to a point. But Marjorie and I had conversations ad nauseum during COVID on the show. Isn't it time for Fauci and all the people of goodwill to publicly resign together, not just to tell us after the crisis how horrible things were? If General Milley, who I hear only wonderful things about, and Defense Secretary Esper and all these people thought Trump was such a danger to this country, why didn't they tell us when he had the power to be a danger to the country? I think the impact would have been far more intense. And now we have all these Republicans, including on your station, CNN. Oh, I had an epiphany on January 6th. It was fine when they were putting kids in cages on the border, but it's not fine when Donald Trump did what he did. I mean, it's BS.
But the excuse they gave was that they were hoping to keep things
hold
from
back
going off the rail, hold back
How'd
the
they
top.
do that?
How'd they do?
Well, in some cases, who was the guy that stole the
Esper
documents off?
Oh, he took this guy. I'll think of him as the economic affairs guy.
Yeah.
There was a document that Trump was about to sign about South Korea. I believe
Some horrible
it was.
thing.
And it was horrible in this guy's estimation. I'll think of his name in a minute. He was a secretary. And what he did is he essentially snuck into the Oval Office, took the document off Trump's desk, knowing that Trump would never remember that the document should have been there. But do you really want to depend upon good fortune?
Be there.
I mean,
well, that's the scary
they won't
thing.
Be there,
they won't be there. It'll
and
be a
if
bunch
you think
of yes
about
men.
Esper and others who should have come forward, I mean, they did do good, but it's been 4 years, and I think they have to look inside their souls about what calculation whether the calculation they're making is correct, and it can't be anymore. I mean, the military is now. Donald Trump is now threatening to
play that.
Okay,
I'll keep it for a second. We're going to play what Trump said in a minute.
Quick pledge break. We're speaking with Juliette Kayyem. I'm going to keep talking to her after, as I just said, this quick pledge break. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
You count on Boston Public Radio for context, analysis, and insight. And Boston Public Radio counts on you. It's our fall membership drive, and we're raising the money needed to keep this show supported in the months ahead. Pitch in and keep the conversation going. Call 888-897-9424 or give online at gbhnews.org.
Michelle in Revere made a contribution, and she said exactly what Jamie said to us this morning, almost verbatim. She said, and Jamie said, I've enjoyed listening to BPR since the pandemic. Jim and Marjorie are the peanut butter and jelly of my workday. Remember saying that, Jamie? Exactly. And now that with a culture show, Jared and the crew are the fine wine that tops it off. Also, thanks for reading my texts on the air sometimes. Doesn't that capture exactly who we are? If you agree with Michelle from Revere, you should call 888-897-9424, gbhnews.org. And if you agree with her, for the next 16 minutes, every dollar you give will be doubled by some fine colleagues at the Beacon Circle patrons thing.
Yeah, this is a great time to give us like a coupon. You get double your money. You give 50,
How do you feel about being 15 peanut butter and jelly to the wine?
I'm peanut butter. She's jelly.
Okay, so it's not like
peanut butter.
Thank you.
Jelly.
Good question.
Or I could be on the fine wine.
Okay, Marjorie.
But in any case, you double your money right now to 888-897-9424 or gbhnews.org. Britton in Cambridge says, I appreciate GBH. I grew up in Boston. I am a better person for having GBH when growing up. How about that? And how about Sunita Williams mentioning her favorite shows on GBH from the space station?
All Creatures Great and whatever it was.
All Creatures Great and Small. Yeah, that's great.
You always have me follow the
astronauts.
most impossible acts and guests ever.
Yeah.
So
well, you go to outer space. No, she wasn't. You go to the International Space Station and call in any time.
So the deal right now is we are almost to the end of our pledge drive. If you've been listening to the station a lot, and we're 24/7, 7 days a week, and you haven't given, maybe this is the time to think about giving, because it may be free to listen, maybe free to watch, but it's not free to put together. It's quite an operation to put together that runs all all week long. So Jim and I are 15 hours a week. That's a lot of hours. 888-897-9424, gbhnews.org. And as we said before, if you give $10 a month now, you'll become a sustainer here, and you will get a digital subscription to the New York Times with all its games and blogs and cooking recipes and Wirecutter. It's like Consumer Reports kind of deal, all that stuff. 888-897-9424, gbhnews.org.
If someone were to give $218 before 1 o'clock, how much would that become?
I think it'd be $436.
Whoa, that is excellent.
Nice.
Yeah, you
that
always,
is really,
he thinks I can't add 2 and 2. He's always shocked.
I didn't say 2 and 2.
Oh, okay.
But I was
See,
impressed.
that's pretty good.
Everybody was impressed.
Believe me, Jim, I am the peanut butter.
You
I
are.
want to make that statement.
Thank you. That's a beautiful.
888-897-9424,
She's the peanut
gbhnews.org.
butter. Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. We're broadcasting live from the library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. The governor will be with us in exactly 20 minutes for an hour to take your questions and ours. In the interim, we're continuing our conversation with national security expert Juliette Kayyem.
So is there any indication that we're getting fed up with Israel, with the we have to give more food to Gaza, or the Israelis have to make sure that food gets into Gaza? What's going on?
It was an interesting week in terms of U.S. policy and what the Biden administration is doing with one hand and the other. So the big news, because it's real, is the deployment of the THAAD missile system, which is the best way to put it is just like the most sophisticated, what we call kinetic anti-ballistic missile system, which means it shoots things out of the sky. It doesn't just explode near them. It is, and has a near 100% perfect completion rate. That is being deployed to Israel in anticipation that Israel's going to do something in response to what Iran did 2 weeks ago, and then there's going to be lots of things lobbed between the two countries. I cross my fingers because I hope that this is just sort of letting the Iranians know that whatever they do is not going to have much consequence. That deployment comes with human beings, soldiers and other experts who know how to deploy it. We do not share the operational capacity with other countries. So in other words, when we send it, there will be troops on the ground who are deploying this device. It's not, we're not fighting the war yet, but it's just, each month everything gets a little bit closer. So that would tell the Israelis that we are with them 100%. And then a letter goes out this weekend, which is consistent with a letter that they sent out 6 or 7 months ago, because they have to satisfy legal requirements for weapons deployments to other countries, that the weapons are not being used to deny humanitarian relief. People will remember that in the spring, we sent a letter, and then Secretary of State Blinken was satisfied with Israel's response, and so we were able to certify that the weapons were not being used to effectuate the humanitarian issues, the starvation, the deprivation of water, the deprivation of sheltering that is going on in Gaza.
And this thing now is saying that food, for the most part, has not gotten to northern Gaza since October 1st. Yeah. And if it doesn't by the end of the month with some specifics, that it will affect our provision of weapons to Israel. Is that what you're saying?
And do you want to make a bet? So the Secretary of State Blinken, who I think, and I've said this before, might have been a better foil to Biden's political need to support the Israelis. Secretary Blinken will inevitably say that what the Israelis are doing is fine.
Well, he's only going to say that if Joe Biden says it's okay to do it. Can we get back? We jumped over something that's really important.
Can I just say something about this?
What did we jump over?
We said when we came. Go ahead.
It's not fine. I think it's just worth saying. It is what Israel is doing now. I understand it is in multi-war efforts, but what it is doing now, put Lebanon aside, where 1/5 of the country is now had to be evacuated. What is happening in Gaza right now is part of the narrative of Israel's right to self-defense. And I just think it's important that anyone who's in front of a microphone reminds people, whatever you think about Israel's right to defense and its need for the missiles and the need for that what is happening in Gaza is just no longer, it's just not defensible, and it is part of the war strategy.
Well, beyond the denial of basic human rights to tens of thousands of innocent people, the latest poll I saw out of Michigan this morning has Donald Trump up by 1 point.
Yeah.
I would argue that if the three Rust Belt states, if one of them go to Donald Trump, which means he's the next president of the United States in all likelihood, in great part, watch the interviews your colleague John King did in Michigan with a lot of people deeply concerned about the Palestinians who are Democrats who said they can't vote for Harris because of this. We got to get, no, we tease this. This is really important.
Okay, can I just say something really, really quickly, though? We should not forget the parents of Hirsch Goldberg, one of the 6 hostages who was killed. We had Carmel Gott's family on a couple of weeks ago. Talked about the conditions they were held by these terrorists and Hamas in a tunnel that was about 2 feet wide, not even 5.5 feet tall, no place to go. I mean, they couldn't stand up. They were squished together, and they were starving. One woman that was 5'5", she weighed 79 pounds. So these are horrible people that did this to these hostages.
Here's what Donald Trump had to say. We promise you this about the enemy from within.
Can I just say something now?
No, you can't.
Yes.
You really can't.
Yes. Yes and yes.
Yeah, okay.
Here's what Trump said about the enemy from within threatening elections on Fox Sunday morning Futures show.
I think the bigger problem are the people from within. We have some very bad people. We have some sick people, radical left lunatics. It should be very easily handled by, if necessary, by National Guard, or if really necessary, by the military.
So the military knows that's inappropriate.
Yes.
It's a domestic thing. When are we going to hear from those leaders about this?
Exactly.
Not the retired ones.
There's actually rules and laws and precedent and training and all sorts of things that would prohibit this. But this is, I know I talked to Jamie about whether we would go over Trump's dancing. Apparently you did that enough yesterday.
We can't do it anymore.
But this is but if you think, and the way I just describe it is that Trump is not consistently cogent. So I can't say what it is he has. He's just clearly not. And so what happens in those situations is he's just defaulting to his safe space. So I have now come to believe that danger is his safe space, right? That this is the place that he goes always, because he can't really talk about tariffs cogently. He can't really talk about reproductive freedoms cogently because he makes no sense whenever he talks about it. But and so he defaults to war, defense, military, whatever, because that's his.
Or to Ave Maria.
Safe,
that's one of the
exactly.
two.
That's his safe space.
Nice to see you.
Bye, everyone. Thank you for coming out.
Juliette Kayyem.
I've been speaking with Juliette Kayyem. She's former Assistant Secretary for Homeland Security under President Barack Obama, faculty chair of the Homeland Security Program at Harvard's Kennedy School of Government, and contributing writer for The Atlantic. Thank you, Juliette. Coming up after the pledge and the 1 o'clock news, Governor Maura Healey joins us here at the Boston Public Library for Ask the Governor. You got good news on utility bills and good news for Nibby, the lovable beaver. That's next on Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH.
And you are listening to Boston Public Radio here on 89.7 GBH. It is 12:54. My name is Sonia Lee, and I'm here with Kiki Loa. And it is the next to last day of our fall membership drive, and we are hoping you can take a couple minutes right now to make a contribution. We have a great reason to do it right now. gbhnews.org, 888-897-9424.
There's a dollar for dollar match going on right now. Give $120, and an extra $120 is donated to GBH by a generous group of Beacon Circle patrons. They want to help make this membership drive a huge success. Sustaining gifts are also matched. Give $10 a month and GBH receives the annual value of $120. Every gift is doubled, but it's only for the next 6 minutes. Get your contribution in right now. gbhnews.org or by giving us a call, 888-897-9424.
And this is your last opportunity to support Boston Public Radio, get your gift doubled, and pick up an annual online subscription to the New York Times. That's right, $10 a month as a sustaining member, a one-time gift of $120. It will be doubled, and we're going to thank you with that online subscription to the Times. Facts are your defense from misinformation this election season, and we've got you covered between GBH and the New York Times. Read as much as you want across all your devices, and And you're also supporting your favorite radio station, GBH, at the same time. It's a special partnership. We hope you'll take advantage of this opportunity. Again, you have a little over 5 minutes left to double your gift, pick up the New York Times, and support Boston Public Radio. GBHnews.org, 888-897-9424.
Covering the news is expensive, and it just gets more and more expensive as the news becomes more complex and intense. GBH pays NPR more than $250,000 each quarter to help cover these expenses. When you make a contribution right now, you'll be doing your part to help GBH and NPR cover the news in the way that you expect. Go online and make your contribution, gbhnews.org, or give us a call, 888-897-9424.
And right now, your contribution is going a little bit further. We have a generous group of our Beacon Circle patrons who are offering to match your contribution dollar for dollar right now. The drive ends tomorrow, but you're listening to Boston Public Radio now, and if you want to get your gift matched and support your BPR listening, well, this is the time to do it. You have just about 4 minutes left, and every dollar you give, they will kick in an additional dollar to the station. $50, $1,000, $500, $50. It all counts, and it will be doubled right now, but just a little over 4 minutes. GBHnews.org, 888-897-9424. We'd like to match another 15 contributions in these last few minutes.
And just a reminder that when you support GBH by giving $10 a month, we will say thank you with the annual online subscription to the New York Times. This is a limited offer, only available until 7 this evening, but your only chance to get that and the match is in the next 3 minutes. Make your contribution online at gbhnews.org or give us a call, 888-897-9424.
And GBH has you covered this election season. This week alone, Jim and Marjorie are hosting 5 mini debates on each of the ballot initiatives. And tomorrow evening at 7, GBH News co-hosts the Massachusetts U.S. Senate debate between Senator Elizabeth Warren and her challenger, Don Deaton. You count on us to keep you up to date on election issues that matter. We deliver thanks to listener contributions. That's why we're asking for your support right now. You can give at gbhnews.org, 888-897-9424.
And as the minutes are ticking away, we are looking to you can still get your contribution matched. Get your contribution maxed. Given the next 2 minutes, and your contribution will be worth twice as much to GBH. That's because there's a dollar-for-dollar match going on right now. Give $120 and an extra $120 is donated by a generous Beacon Circle patrons. Your generous contribution right now will pay for even more news and programs that are so important to you. Online, gbhnews.org, or by giving us a call, 888-897-9424.
It's a squeaker. You still have time to get your contribution doubled and also pick up that annual online subscription to the New York Times with that one gift to GBH. This is only available until 7, but you do it right now. Your gift is being doubled right now. You can give at gbhnews.org, or you can call 888-897-9424. Here's the deal. We're looking to match another 8 contributions here in these last few minutes. Remember, the deadline or the membership drive is ending tomorrow, but your contribution is being matched in Boston Public Radio right now at gbhnews.org.
Support for GBH comes from you. And the Trustees, presenting Halloween on the Hill. Attendees can celebrate the beauty and fun of autumn in Massachusetts at the Trustees Long Hill in Beverly. Advance tickets required. Learn more at thetrustees.org/Halloween. And Direct Tire and Auto Service. The team members at Direct Tire want to thank all their clients for 48 years of business. Tires, brakes, and complete auto repair. Direct Tire and Auto Service. Not just service, customer service.
I'm digital producer Alexi Cohan, and you and I are listening to 89.7 WGBH HD1 Boston, online at gbhnews.org. GBH News with NPR. What matters to you?
I'm Jim Browdy, ahead on Hour 3 of Boston Public Radio, live from the Boston Public Library. For the full hour, we're talking with Governor Maura Healey, back for October's Ask the Governor. With less than 3 weeks until Election Day, we'll talk the states nationally and then locally with the ballot questions, plus the latest on a post-Stewart healthcare Massachusetts, as well as is the legislature finally ready to get of their 5-month, every other year vacation.
I'm Marjorie Egan. Plus, we'll ask the governor about a big break for utility customers and the migrant crisis. Do you have a question for the governor? Call or text us at 877-301-8970. Or if you're near Copley Square, come on down to the Boston Public Library and ask the governor in person. Governor Maura Healey is next on hour number 3 of Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH Live from the Boston Public Library.
Live from NPR News, I'm Lakshmi Singh. The presidential candidates are each attempting to energize constituencies where they may be especially vulnerable. For former President Donald Trump, that includes women and heightened concerns over curtailed reproductive rights. His nominations of 3 justices led to a conservative supermajority at the U.S. Supreme Court and in 2022 the end of Roe v. Wade, the 1973 ruling that legalized abortion nationwide. At a Georgia town hall aired by Fox News today, a woman asked Trump why government was involved in, quote, women's basic rights. Trump repeated the issue needs to be decided on the state level.
Remember this issue has torn this country apart for 52 years. So we got it back in the states. We have a vote of the people, and it's working its way through the system. And ultimately, it's going to be the right thing.
Trump says he believes exceptions should be made in cases of rape, incest, or when the life of the mother is in danger. The town hall involved an all-women audience. Vice President Kamala Harris returns to Pennsylvania today. The visit to the critical Philadelphia suburbs comes as Harris and her allies are working to win over Republican voters who've become disillusioned with Trump. NPR's Sarah McCammon has the latest.
Vice President Harris's visit to Bucks County, Pennsylvania, comes just 2 days after she campaigned in Erie, a sign of Pennsylvania's importance in next month's election. Olivia Troy, a former Trump administration official who's acting as a surrogate for the Harris campaign, says disaffected Republicans could make the difference in a close election.
I think this vote will be critical. I think that when you're in such a competitive election environment and the margins are so slim in terms of what we're seeing, every vote will matter.
Harris will be joined by more than 100 Republican supporters, including former Congressman Adam Kinzinger, according to a campaign official who wasn't authorized to speak publicly about the plans. Sarah McCammon, NPR News, Washington.
The Federal Trade Commission has finalized its so-called click-to-cancel rule. NPR's Scott Horsley reports the measure is designed to make it easier for customers to drop out of memberships and subscriptions.
Every year, the FTC gets thousands of complaints from people who feel trapped by recurring charges for goods and services they no longer want. Complaints have multiplied as companies have begun selling everything from meal kits to razor blades under the subscription model. Researchers at Stanford and Texas A&M found people often keep paying for subscriptions long after they'd like to, either because they've forgotten about them or because it's simply too much trouble to quit. The FTC's new rule says companies must make it as easy to cancel a membership as it was to sign up. Under pressure from businesses, the Commission dropped a provision that would have required companies to send customers an annual reminder about their subscription. The new rule takes effect in 6 months. Scott Horsley, NPR News.
You're listening to NPR.
Good afternoon. With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro. Democratic candidate for Vice President Tim Walz heading back to Massachusetts this coming Sunday to attend another fundraiser. Mass Live reports that the event, at a location and time only known to attendees, has a ticket price that starts at $500 and tops out at $100,000. According to a recent UMass Amherst WCVB poll, Walz and Vice President Kamala Harris hold a roughly 2-to-1 lead over Republicans Donald Trump and J.D. Vance here in Massachusetts. The prestigious Broad Institute of MIT and Harvard says it's laying off 75 IT workers as well as a dozen workers from other departments. Boston Business Journal reports that the cuts come amid a number of recent layoffs in the life sciences and technology sectors in the state. The Broad Institute is a genetics-based, focused research organization that has been a major life sciences center in Cambridge for over 20 years. Now, meanwhile, Massachusetts Governor Maura Healey and the Massachusetts Life Sciences Center have announced over $21 million in tax incentives for 19 life science companies in the Commonwealth. Moderna and Vertex Pharmaceuticals will each receive over $5 million in tax breaks from the state, which will translate to the creation of 645 new jobs locally. Overall, that $21 million is expected to create over 1,100 jobs statewide. Bruins in Colorado tonight, sunny mid-50s today. We could see a frost overnight. We are at 52 in Boston right now. Time now for Ask the Governor on Boston Public Radio.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Progressive Insurance. Progressive is looking for dedicated and forward-thinking individuals to join their growing team. More information, including application, at progressive.com/careers.
He is Jim Browdy. I am Marjorie Egan. Welcome to hour number 3 of Boston Public Radio. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library, as we do every Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday. Thank you. And we are streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. GBH and the New England Public Media. Jim, New England Public Media. Thank you.
New England Public Media, correct.
Thank you. We'll host a debate tomorrow night at 7 o'clock between Senator Elizabeth Warren and her GOP challenger, John Deaton. Of course, that's going to be broadcast at 7 o'clock on GBH Channel 2.
And our remaining 2 ballot question debates are tomorrow morning at 11 and Friday morning at 11.
That's right.
Tomorrow is the question that would allow for the unionization of rideshare drivers, and Friday is question 1 about the auditor having power to audit the legislature.
Yep.
We're joined now until the end of the show by the Governor of the Commonwealth. That'd be Maura Healey for October's edition of Ask the Governor. The number to reach her, if you have a question, is 877-301-8970. Text or call. And if you're here at the library, you can come find our colleague Nicole, who's in the green thing over there. Hello, Governor Healey. How are you?
I'm great.
Nice to see you.
Yes, thank you very much for joining us, Governor Healey. So let's start with some good news, just in time for winter time coming. It's not winter time yet, but it is getting colder, and some of us have turned the heat on. We have some good news about utility bills.
Yeah. We recently announced that we struck a deal with 5 of our utilities here in Massachusetts to lower people's electric and gas bills as we head into the winter. So, we estimate that for some, it'll be a savings of, $470 on a gas bill and a little more over $1,000 on an electric bill. So that's a good thing. I mean, part of our agenda is making Massachusetts more affordable. Obviously, this is, it's not going to cover everybody because not everybody's going to qualify, but it is something that's going to happen automatically for hundreds of thousands of people.
Who does qualify, briefly, if you can?
It's lower income households.
Just lower income.
Yep.
And they don't have to do anything.
But it's not just. I mean,
I don't mean just.
We're talking about hundreds of thousands of residents in Massachusetts.
And they don't have to do
good.
anything. If they're
no, that's a good thing. I'm glad you pointed that out, Jim. It's automatic, right? So you don't have to sign up or fill out forms. It's just going to happen. And I think that's meaningful savings to folks.
Aren't you supposed to put something on the bill to get credit for that, to say, this is from your Governor Maura Healey? No?
That sounds like a former president move.
Yeah, he did that on the checks during COVID.
So, Governor, you're a pretty optimistic person, it appears, at least publicly. Whenever you've asked you about this 5-month informal session by the legislature, economic development bill that matters a lot to you sitting there, climate bill matters a lot to you sitting there, you say, I'm confident things are going to happen in the informal session. We call it a vacation. They call it an informal session. 3 of the 5 months are gone. Are you confident, based on the reality of the discussions, that, let's just pick those 2, climate and economic development, are going to reach your desk before the end of the year?
Well, I certainly hope so. I certainly hope that we get this done and get this done in real short order. I am pleased with the legislative record over the last 22 months. We've gotten a lot done, actually. And even after the formal session closed, we were able to, I know, sign a number of bills on everything from gun safety to maternal health, range of things. So that's good. But I have said, look, it's October. We've got to get this done, particularly economic development, and particularly with respect to climate. What we need to see immediately, we're sitting on projects that need to be permitted, that need to be sited. It's very important for us to modernize the grid, to build out the kind of transmission that we need to bring the energy offshore, onshore. So we've really got to get going on that infrastructure work. So, I'm going to continue to be in conversation with legislative leadership on that. I know they are working on that. But look, I've got ambitious plans for the state, leaning into life sciences, climate technology, making us the global hub for that, and also leaning into applied AI. The other thing that's important, cities and towns depend on this economic development funding for a lot of their initiatives and projects. So I'm hopeful that we'll get it done very soon.
And just for people to understand, when they're in formal session, 50% plus 1 in each chamber gets it to your desk. while they're in 5 months of informal session, one objector kills the thing. The likely next Speaker of the House, who's the Senate House Ways and Means Chairman, made an announcement the other day that I'm paraphrasing. Maybe it's time to relook at our schedule, and one of the things he intimated might be looked at is this 5-month break that happens every second year. Would you support eliminating or constricting that time?
I don't have a view. I leave it to them.
You don't want them in session?
Look, they continue to do the work. I mean, just recently I was able to sign into law something I proposed, the Federal Funds Act, which is going to allow us to leverage our ability to bring back more federal dollars to the state. And that was something that was signed out of session, acted on. It's a really good thing. As a result of the work we've done chasing federal funds, my administration's brought back over $8 billion to Massachusetts. And we proposed a law, which the legislature recently passed, that I signed, that's going to allow us to leverage some state funds to qualify for more federal funding. So,
but wouldn't the odds be greater, just the economic development, last question on this, wouldn't the odds be greater that it would reach your desk if they were in session rather than not in session, by definition?
I'm going to leave that to them in terms of what they think is going to be best for getting the work of the people done.
We're talking to Governor Healey, 877-301-8970.
One last thing for me before we go to the phones and the text, Governor. We just had a debate. We're having a debate every day this week on the 5 ballot questions. We just did one today on question 2. You're unusual. A lot of Democrats do not buck the Massachusetts Teachers Union, but you have, because you think that question 2 is a bad idea. So why do you feel that way?
Well, you're right. I actually listened to the debate that you had earlier, and
how do we do?
Oh, you did excellent. No, I think everyone did. I think everyone did a good job of presenting their views. And look, I come to this, yes, as the daughter of 2 union teachers. My mom was a longtime school nurse and health educator, and my stepdad was actually president of his teachers union. And I have tremendous regard and respect for our teachers and educators everywhere, and especially in Massachusetts. For me, question 2 is one of these, to me, unfortunate, creations of this ballot process sometimes. I don't think that the ballot process is always the best way to make policy here in the state. And the reason that I oppose question 2 and the elimination of MCAS as a graduation requirement is because, as a matter of education policy, I think, as does my Secretary of Education.
He's here tomorrow, by the way.
You'll see Pat tomorrow, Secretary Tutwiler. It's better for us as a state to have a statewide standard graduation requirement. So, I don't want different requirements for Chelsea than Wellesley, for example. There's got to be some uniform requirement. And then our job in government, the state and local level, is to support our educators, support our paras, support teachers, and support students in districts, right, in making sure they're providing the resources to meet those standards. So, I am of the view that Massachusetts, look, we're #1 in education. We were recently also voted #1 for innovation, #1 place to raise a family, #1 place to have a child, #1 place to live if you're a woman. We've got great things going on here. Education has been our calling card. I am very proud that Massachusetts is at the top. And we're at the top because of a lot of work of districts, of our educators, of our teachers, right, and of our students. So I want to keep that going. Without a replacement for a uniform standard statewide, I don't think it makes sense to go this way. And I think that there's a better way to achieve this. I am, as a former civil rights lawyer, very sensitive to the needs of students with disabilities, our English language learners, who are the majority of the 700 kids. Now, it's less than 1%, but if you're that child, it doesn't matter what percentage you are. And I care about every single child. We've got to be doing the work to figure out what is the path to support them and helping them get to where they need to be.
How are you voting on the other 4 questions? Audit the legislature.
I'll leave that to the voters.
Well, you're voting, right?
Yeah.
Oh, what are you don't tell us what you're going to do?
Well, not when I'm going to leave it to the voters.
Okay, how about question 3?
What's that?
What is question 3?
Is that psychedelics?
No, psychedelics is 4.
Psychedelics is 4.
Oh, rideshare
unions. For Uber Lyft is 4. Is that 4?
Yeah, both of those. Uber Lyft, I'm still reviewing. Psychedelics, I'm still reviewing.
And 5? What is 5?
What's 5? I don't know.
What?
Yeah.
Oh, tip workers.
Tip workers.
What are you doing on that?
I actually oppose it because, look, I waitressed on and off from the time I was 13 to 24.
Were you any good?
I got a lot of tips. I think I did a pretty good job.
Yeah.
I hustled, and in a variety of settings. I'd work at a diner early morning. I work at nicer places in the evenings. I was a cocktail waitress for many years at the Hampton Beach Casino.
Oh my God!
At the Hampton Beach Casino.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's my second favorite job. So look, I have talked to a lot of servers, a lot of bartenders, a lot of wait staff. I've talked to a lot of restaurant owners, and honestly, I think this is a well-intentioned effort brought by out-of-state interests. Here in Massachusetts, we have. I think we're doing it right here, and I think that if you talk to, what I'd say to the public is, go home, talk to your wait staff, talk to your bartenders, talk to your, that restaurant that you love, talk to the owners, because I think that. It's important. I think it's important to vote no on this, because I think you run the risk of closing restaurants and putting these workers out of work, actually, because the restaurant owners I speak are not going to be able to afford this, and they're going to end up laying off people. In some instances, some have told me they're just going to shut down. So, I think that people are if you talk to them, they're doing well. Look, as the Attorney General, I fought hard for workplace protections, for fair wages, for benefits, for all that. So I am certainly in this camp, but I think this actually harms that effort, and that's why I feel really strongly about this particular question.
Maura Healey is with us for the hour, and she's now with you, Peter on the North Shore. Welcome.
Hi,
yes.
Peter.
Hi.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. It's an honor. First time, long time, about time.
Thank you.
Governor Healey, it's an honor. I'm a big fan of the recent accessory dwelling unit law, but it has a flaw. It limits an ADU to 50% of the finished area of a principal home, or 900 square feet, whichever is smaller. This benefits folks with large homes and discriminates against people who, by limited means or moral choices, live in a small home. We live in a 936 square foot home, but fortunately have an acre of land. But so the law limits us to only 468 square feet ADU, and the cost just doesn't make it cost effective for us. So why can't people who live in a small home but have the room on their property have a 900 square foot ADU? And this would allow folks in smaller homes to also build wealth.
You got accessory dwelling unit.
Yeah.
Is ADU.
Well, thanks for the call, Peter. Look, I'm glad you're a fan of ADUs. I am. I think it's a really good policy move. It's a quick way to generate and bring online a number of housing units really relatively quickly, right? In terms of the specifics, I think, what we passed on the law was making ADUs something by right. It's a floor. I mean, ultimately, some of this is going to be left to your individual community, and I suggest, Peter, that you advocate and talk to folks there. But directionally, this is absolutely where we need to go. We need to bring more housing online in the state. I mean, people can't afford rent. They can't afford to downsize. I don't want people leaving our great state. I don't want companies not expanding here because people can't afford to live here. And so that's why I'm really proud that, one of our signature initiatives was to put this Affordable Homes Act. We got it done, a $5 billion housing bond bill that's going to bring online more housing. ADUs is one way to it.
When you say, I just want to be clear here, when you said there's some latitude or whatever expression you use for local communities, this is a statewide mandate. There may be some things on the margins, but they cannot stop these ADUs as long as they come within the parameters of law.
Yeah, that's the idea. It was to have a statewide approach, because honestly, at the end of the day, no one of our 351 cities and towns can solve the housing crisis alone. Okay, we need uniformity, and every community is different, but we need at least a uniformity of effort across our state to and what we put forward in the law was a range of ways to get there. ADUs include that.
Peter, thanks for the call. We appreciate it.
So people are probably familiar with the disaster at Stewart Hospital, the 9 hospitals, I believe, owned by them in the Commonwealth. And we've been reading these stories in the Globe about, private jets and yachts and all this spending while medical equipment was repossessed from St. Elizabeth's Hospital, which is in Brighton. Anyway, Boston Medical Center's taken over St. Elizabeth's and Good Samaritan in Brighton, but Carney Hospital in Dorchester is shut down. A lot of people there are concerned about very sick people and fewer doctors. And then we just have an email from Sue, who's in Groton. She says, I live near the Neshoba Valley Medical Center. All of us here are devastated by stewards closing the hospital at the end of August. We're so grateful to you, Governor Healey, and to Representative Margaret Scarsdale for creating a task force to explore options to reopen the hospital. Can you please tell me what is your commitment to ensuring that we have medical services, and especially medical services, in the Neshoba Valley?
Yeah. Well, I appreciate Sue's question. Look, I've said this for a long time now. Stewart, and specifically Ralph De La Torre, who was its CEO, did terrible things. A bad guy, a really bad guy, and supported by his board, by the way. He didn't act alone. He'll get his day in court, in I think, a variety of courtrooms, frankly, because he should be heavily investigated, prosecuted, and brought to justice for his crime against so many people in Massachusetts. I mean, what he did to these healthcare systems, to the workforce, to the patients who rely on that care, is just terrible. Okay, so that's over here, right? And that's for others, Department of Justice and others, to pursue, and they are. They will be. What I would say is, right now, I am just really grateful for the work, and particularly the leadership of Kate Walsh, who, as you know, is our Secretary of Health and Human Services, Robbie Goldstein. Yes, she deserves applause, Department of Public Health, because this was a tough situation. When you get word that 8 hospitals are going to close in Massachusetts, that's a big deal. That's hundreds of thousands of patients at risk. That's the stability of the healthcare market at risk. That's 13,000 jobs at risk. So what she and Robbie and the team did, working in partnership, by the way, with the Mass Nurses Association, SEIU 1199, with our great hospital providers and network out there, is we saved 6 of those 8 hospitals. 6 of those 8 hospitals are saved, okay? And by the way, instead of being run by a scoundrel like Ralph De La Torre, right, they're now being run by good, not-for-profit hospitals, right? And that's a good thing for Massachusetts. Now, not everybody, were we able to save. But what I have committed to as governor, and the reason for that is I didn't have other buyers, other hospitals ready to come in and acquire Neshoba or acquire Kearney. So what do you do in that situation? The state can't just fund the operation of a hospital. I mean, we're talking about tens of millions, hundreds of millions of dollars a year. What I have said is that let's convene in those areas and figure out what the strategy is. I'm very sensitive to the folks in the Neshoba region. I grew up in a rural area, right? It's not easy in drive times and hospital times. If you're having a heart attack or some emergent issue, you want to be able to get somewhere. I'm very sensitive to that. So what we've said is we're going to bring together a group of stakeholders in the area. We're going to figure out what kind of care is needed and who's best positioned to get that care. And are there other providers we can get to come in at this point with maybe a different model of care that will meet the needs to take care of folks in that area? So more to come, Sue. I forget when the meeting is. We have a series of stakeholder conversations happening both in the Neshoba region and also in the Kearney region. And I'm glad that I'm grateful to Michael Keri, who you've had on.
Talk to him about it.
Yep. So he's agreed to co-chair, along with the Boston Public Health Commissioner, a similar convening that we're going to do around Kearney. And what should become of Kearney? How can that best be utilized to meet the needs of community?
Let's go to Nikki in Winchester. You're next on Boston Public Radio.
Hi, everyone. Hi, Governor Healey.
Hi, Nikki.
Hi, I'm calling because I found out yesterday that my son failed the English MCAS. And he is on an IEP. He works very hard. He has learning disabilities. But what do you say to a kid like him who now has to think about retaking the English MCAS rather than focusing on all of the other things he needs to do during his very difficult junior year of high school?
Yeah, well, I appreciate your call, Nikki, and I appreciate your advocacy on behalf of your son. And look, I look out for your son. I want to take care of your son. I want to make sure that at the state level and at the local level, resources are provided to help your son. As I said earlier, my issue, it's a policy issue, on this MCAS question. And do you want to be a state where there are no standards at all across the board? the only standard we would have, but we would be lower than Alabama and Mississippi in that regard, okay? We're the #1 state in the country in education, but we would move to below Alabama and Mississippi in terms of the lack of standards. And, you know, that is concerning to me. The only standard we would have required under law at that point would be a requirement for gym class, which, you know, that's important, but, you know, that's what this is about. And it's also about making sure that students like Nikki's son are getting the resources that they need. As was talked about earlier during the debate, I mean, MCAS is a test that's given regularly, and there are multiple opportunities for students to take MCAS. I'll also say this. It's fair to say and to question, you know, is MCAS measuring all that it should? Or are there other things that we need to measure? Are there improvements that need to be made to the system? Are there things that we need to do differently for students like Nikki's son? These are fair questions. And you heard that offered this morning on the debate you had, right? And I understand those are real concerns and real issues that folks, including the teachers union, have raised. But voting no on question 2 doesn't preclude us from going forward and figuring out together what that needs to look like.
Nikki, we wish you a lot of luck, you and your son as well. We're about to be joined for a couple of minutes before we go to the break by the president, and our host, by the way, the president of the Boston Public Library, David Leonard. David, welcome. It's good to see you.
Hi, David.
Hi, good to be with you. Governor, welcome back to the Boston Public Library.
Great to see you, David. Thank you.
So our understanding is the reason you two are together for a couple of minutes, Governor Healey, is because the 250th anniversary is right around the corner and planning is going ahead. So why don't you give us a couple of sentences, then we'll hear from David.
Well, I'm so happy to see you, David, and this is such an incredible repository here of history, which I'm sure you'll talk about. Look, next year kicks off the 250th anniversary of Massachusetts. We are the place where this country was born. We're the place where it all began. The shots rang out. The Constitution was first drafted, right? And we've been a state of innovation from the very beginning. More recently on things like universal health care and marriage equality. I tout where Massachusetts is, you know, including its ranking on things like education and best place to raise a child. We're also the best place for innovation. We were recently ranked #1 there as well. So I'm excited about next year. It's a chance for us to celebrate our history and to have communities around the state finding ways to celebrate our history. We've launched this effort through our economic development team and Mass 250, working with a number of partners and stakeholders. It's going to be a ton of fun and a great way to show off the state, where we've been, and also what's possible.
What's your piece of the action, David Leonard?
Well, I was happy to join the governor and many individuals working on the statewide initiative up at the State House. Yourself and Mayor Michelle Wu helped us kick off. We had a reenactment with Paul Revere showing up on horseback, and I believe someone exited the entire event on horseback at the end. Our governor was seen riding off.
You rode off on a damn horse?
I wanted to ride off. I wanted to at least take it down to the common, but I grew up riding horses in New Hampshire, so they offered. They said, "You want to ride?" And I said, "I'd love to." So nobody really knew I was. My team was a little confused, but it was great fun.
It was
great
memorable.
celebration. The reenactors.
Yes,
you know,
they were truly amazing. And
what's the library going to do?
So we're part of the Boston's Commemoration Commission as well, and so we're working with other partners throughout the city and our colleagues at the city to basically list a large number of moments throughout not just next year in 2026, but even this year. So we're taking a 3-year approach where our theme for all of our programmatic work this year is about revolutionary music. Next year it'll be revolutionary art, leading up to the concept of revolution in 1776, 2026, and really looking at that through the lens and how do we tell our history in a more inclusive way than perhaps some of the traditional ways of approaching this. We, of course, will have items from our own collection on display, which include John Adams' personal library, which you can see up in the Rare Books and Special Collections, John Adams' own copy of the Massachusetts Constitution that he drafted, as well as our now 7 copies of the Declaration of Independence that we hold here at Boston Public Library. And it's just a thrill to be here with the governor, because not only is this the Boston Public Library for the city of Boston, but we also serve as the library for the Commonwealth. And so we're looking to play our role not just for the city, but for the Commonwealth as well.
We're tight on time, but is there a place to monitor yet what Mass 250 is going to do online, or is this too early for this?
No, you can go online, check out Mass 250, and it'll be constantly updated. But we've got some really exciting programming.
I think it's a mixture of things we'll do together, as well as uplifting things that will be done by the individual institutions that will be participating.
Can I just say one thing quickly? When you were kind enough, David, to lead us around some of the things,
it's awesome.
When you're in the presence of some of these documents, and you know that someone like Adams held this book in his hand, I mean, it's awe-inspiringly
and
great.
And the notes in the margins that tell us maybe what he was thinking at the time,
incredible.
traveling around Europe, learning from what worked there and what didn't work where.
We're so lucky, and we're so lucky to have you as steward of our history, too, through the Boston Public Library. I encourage people to get down, visit the library. And we live, look at all around us in Massachusetts. We're so lucky to live amidst this history. I walk into the State House every day, and the cornerstone of the foundation of your State House was laid by Paul Revere and Sam Adams.
And you were on the same horse the other day. By the way, it's Massachusetts250.org. Before you go, there's another person who apparently wants to be part of this conversation. Somebody, Kim from Salem, is on the line with the governor. Kim, welcome to the show. What's up?
Kim. Hey, how's it going, team?
Yeah, who are you?
I am Kim from Salem, the former mayor, and had a very important question for Governor Healey.
Oh, excellent. Take it away.
Well, we all know the bewitching season is on us and that the governor has a lovable golden retriever, Charlie. We're wondering what is Charlie's costume for Halloween.
Excellent.
Nibby the Beaver might be.
Explain who Nibby the Beaver is.
I'm going to take that. I think that's an excellent idea. We'll dress Charlie as Nibby the Beaver. Excellent idea. See, this is why she's such a killer, LG.
What do you do now since you're not mayor anymore?
I am enjoying supporting our strong and rich tourism and hospitality industry by not running Halloween.
Lieutenant Governor Kim Driscoll.
You know what she's doing?
Go ahead. Yeah.
She is. I'll talk to you about Nibby.
Please.
But I want you to hear from the LG on this, which I can't believe she just called in. She must not have too much to do. She has a ton to do because she's doing such an incredible job.
Late.
She's really running the state.
Okay.
She's really running the state.
What do you want her to tell us?
She's running Salem on Halloween.
She mentioned tourism, but I am. We were just voted by the Cato Institute of all places at the top grade in New England for where we are fiscally, financially, and I'm proud of that record over the last 2 years, being able to manage the budget, manage resources, while also making incredible investments. We've invested like never before in transportation, in education, continuing child care grants from the COVID era funding that the feds had that all then went away. We continued it here. Free community college, right? Free breakfast and lunch for students. We also cut taxes, by the way, first time in over 20 years. So I was, pleased to see a good report card on how we're doing.
Well, we only have 30 seconds left. Can you tell, everybody knows the story already because it was the hottest story. Tell us about Nibby and who is Nibby or what is Nibby or whatever, and what'd you do?
Well, LG and I got word that there was this, there's a woman who's...
Newhouse.
Newhouse Wildlife Refuge. And, we have probably 200 rehabbers who are out there. And basically, they're folks who go and pick up and care for injured wildlife and care for them to the point where they can go back out into the wild, so to speak. And this woman had a beaver that she got when it was very, very young. And, beavers are social creatures. And unfortunately, this little beaver didn't have any other beavers around. She tried to bring other beavers. She found an orphan beaver from Pennsylvania and tried to bring that in. But this little beaver, Nibby, did not take to its new roommate. And in fact, built a dam on the floor of the structure to keep this other beaver out. So bottom line, this little beaver, though it had been her care for many months and had grown to 30 pounds, really wasn't going to be able to survive out in the wild and would have been rejected and probably attacked by other beavers.
Right
so
there,
we had to make a decision, and I determined that Nibby should stay with her owner, and Nibby and her owner were granted an educational permit and license to live out their days at Newhouse and provide a source of education and inspiration to the public about beaver and beaver life.
So the dog is going to be dressed up as Nibby. Is that what you're saying?
Well, I'm going to have to run that by Joanna.
Okay, fine.
All right.
Lieutenant Governor, thank you for your time.
She is the best, by the way. Hey, Kim, what did I get wrong?
No, I was going to say we've got a governor who knows how to be a strong manager, invest in housing and education and transportation, climate work, and can work to save beavers. Like, come on. That's local governors can do all that.
Kim Driscoll, thank you. David Leonard, thank you.
I'm going to kill you.
And we're going to take a break.
We're going to take a quick break, and we're going to be back with more calls and texts for the Governor of the Commonwealth. Maura Healey is going to be with us till the top of the hour. You're listening to Boston Public Radio. We are streaming live at youtube.com/GBH News.
Radio Campesina has everything you would want from a commercial radio station. Nostalgic music, catchy jingles, and this election year, advice for fighting disinformation.
Don't share it because you become part of the problem by reposting it. Keep digging. If you feel like it's too good to be true, that's your first sign.
I'm Elsa Chang. We visit their studios in Phoenix on All Things Considered from NPR News.
Today at 4, here on GBH News 89.7.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy, Marjorie Egan. We are joined by the Governor of the Commonwealth. She's kind enough to join us and you every month for Ask the Governor. She's here till today about 1:53. And the number to contact her is 877-301-8970.
Tina from Hudson, thank you for calling.
Hi, Tina. Hi, Tina.
Guys, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Governor Healey. I'm getting an echo. What should I do?
We're fine on this end if you can do it. Yeah, we're fine.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. I'm so proud to have you as our governor. I voted for you, and I'm really excited by all the work you're doing on the national front as well for our wonderful Kamala Harris. My question has to do with climate and clean energy. We were very disappointed about the bill not getting through the legislature, and your effort to tack it onto the supplemental budget was laudable, but we really need to make a plan to get off gas. So I'm hoping that you will support the legislature reporting out the climate bill, get out of committee, and bring it to the floor to a vote so we can get a plan to get off gas and not just have siting and energy permitting in the way forward for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Tina.
Oh, thanks for the call, Tina. And I sure hope to see a climate bill. I would love to see a climate bill get to my desk and to be able to sign it. As you know, I've been a longtime climate champion. I, as governor, was the first governor in the country's history to appoint a cabinet-level climate chief. So, we've leaned in really hard into this space. So I, hope we see that and join with you in voicing support.
Tina, thank you very much for the call. We appreciate it.
Let's go to, where are we going next?
We'll find out
We're going
imminently.
next. By the way, I have a lot of people texting about IV fluid shortages because of the hurricane.
Yeah.
So,
well, speaking of climate, look, the severity of storms. Look at all the consequences, right? Baxter is a company that makes saline, that makes IV fluids. It turns out has 60% of the U.S. market. Hospitals everywhere rely on this. Baxter's facility was totally wiped out by the hurricane in North Carolina, and as a result, their supply chain issues. Our Health and Human Services and Department of Public Health are really all over this and in touch with the Hospital Association and with hospitals here. There are some hospitals who are taking steps to try to triage things in the interim while they wait for more supplies to come online. But to me, what this points up is, and we, by the way, turned over our state stockpile to hospitals to use of saline. But I think the bigger issue here, and something we've got to continue to talk about and take action on, is what are we doing to prepare for the transformation that we need to see across sectors, across industry, across our whole way of life when it comes to climate and the consequences of climate. This gets to why I'm proud of the team for chasing so much of those federal dollars that's going back into making our infrastructure here, roads, bridges, dams, culverts, seawalls more resilient, right? And proof against flooding and erosion. And this is the mentality. We need to build in a resilient way, in a sustainable way, and we also need to shore up, and account for the different issues that may occur, including something like this that maybe nobody would think of. One storm that wipes out a facility that provides 60% of the nation's IV fluids.
John in the car, thank you for calling.
Hello, John in the car.
Hey, how's it going?
Good.
Maybe this might have been a better conversation for the lieutenant governor, but I was in Roxbury Court this morning, and there were only 2 judges, and I'm just curious, when are you going to have more judges appointed? I feel like we have a lot of judges sitting on your desk and no appointments.
Well, I guess I differ with that, John. We have appointed a lot of judges. In fact, I just nominated somebody to the district court yesterday, maybe 2 people. So I'm really delighted, too, by the quality of people we've been able to appoint and the quality of the applications. So as a former lawyer and attorney general, and the LG is a former lawyer as well, know that the team is really committed to that. I'm grateful to my JNC for the work they've done in getting names to our desk, and we're going to move through any openings as quickly as possible, John.
John, thanks.
There is one issue that it seems to be an overwhelmed place. The parole board. The Globe just did an editorial about it. They're talking about how the SJC decided that those convicted of crimes when they're 18, 19, or 20 should not be sentenced to life without possibility of parole. And I guess you could be in favor of that, certainly if you're one of those people. But that because the parole board is so overwhelmed, there's a backlog of these people getting released. So what can be done about that?
Well, that's something that we're looking at right now. Ever since the SJC issued the Mattis decision,
yes.
It resulted in a larger number of people being eligible for parole. And, they're entitled to have hearings. There are only so many parole board members, so there's only so much territory, so to speak, that they can cover and work through. So we're looking at that right now, talking with them, seeing if there's some things that can be done just as a regulatory matter and just new appointments, or is it something that the legislature needs to address by adding more members to the parole board so they can work through a bigger volume. But trust me, I'm committed to working as my legal team is as closely with the parole board as we can to make sure that we get the resources in place to make sure that folks have these hearings and have them expeditiously.
Governor, can I just, before we get to, I want to read from a lead of a Globe story. You picked a new head of the state police from outside the system, which I think a lot of people celebrated. You were allowed to do that by the new law, Jeffrey Noble. Lead paragraph of a Globe story a few weeks ago, September actually. The scandal-plagued Massachusetts State Police is subject to at least 4, the new head, is the subject of at least 4 discrimination complaints that allege he bypassed qualified candidates who were gay, female, and people of color for promotions while fostering a culture of cronyism during his time as leader of the New Jersey State Police. You have said, we had the opportunity to review personally everything, and the Lieutenant Governor and I are quite confident in Colonel Noble. You vetted him, etc. 2 questions, Governor, if we can. For gay women and people of color state cops or state cops to be, how do you assure them that they're going to be treated fairly, 1? And 2, assuming any of these charges, which I assume you determined were meritless when you said you vetted them, are sustained, what happens to the head of the state police then?
Well, let me say that I am so pleased that Jeff Noble took this job. He's the new colonel of the state police, and he's ready, and he's already started and is underway. In fact, we were together at a graduation for new troopers just last week. Look, as the first woman elected here, as the first gay woman elected in the country, Kim and I have led an administration that's been very focused on diversity and inclusivity. Rest assured, we would never have put somebody in place that we did not have full confidence in, including their ability to respect and make sure that that everybody is treated well and treated fairly. And we felt entirely comfortable having reviewed Colonel Noble's entire record in that regard.
So you think all the charges against him are without merit?
I don't know what, I got to say, as somebody, my name is on a lawsuit just about every other day by dint of my position. So, it's just the nature of the business, so to speak. When you're in these positions, you're inevitably named in suits. But we looked at all of this and I feel very comfortable. Also, there were so many incredibly positive, laudatory things said by men and women who Jeff Noble had worked with in the New Jersey State Police, that I am confident that everyone should feel comfortable. Men, women, gay, straight should feel very comfortable with the new superintendent of the Massachusetts State Police.
Thank you.
We have Joey at the Boston Public Library. Mike, who has a question for the governor.
Hey, Joe, what's up? Hold it, we need a mic. Say something. Keep talking. How are you, Joey?
We're waiting for the mic to come on. The mic's
Is that going to happen or no?
Okay, well, why don't we
Joey,
take a...
sit tight. We promise we'll get back to you. Don't go away.
Oh, the mic's
it's okay
on now. Go ahead.
Okay
go ahead, Joey. Go ahead.
All right. Okay. There we go. Good morning or good afternoon. Sorry,
Hi,
college
Joey.
classes are making me lose track of time throughout the day. First of all, I just want to say happy LGBTQ+ History Month, and thank you for leading the way in making it so that a lot of queer young people like myself can see what's possible for us as we look to LGBTQ+ history. I did want to ask about the election, though. So there's a lot of people in Massachusetts who I've spoken with even who don't really necessarily see the point in voting. Because we're not in a state like Pennsylvania, like New Hampshire, even though we can get very involved in those states and help canvass, what would you say to folks who maybe, while they're working throughout the day, don't see the federal funding going to those bridges in Cape Cod? Why should they still get out and vote here in Massachusetts?
Well, first off, Joey, great to see you. Yes, and happy LGBTQ month. Thank you for taking time out of studies to come down and be with us. I just want to say, Joey, like I'd say to them, you're out of your mind, right? If you go, look at the ballot. Of course, this year we've got Kamala Harris and Tim Walz at the top. Super important, especially anyone who cares about LGBTQ equality. But also with that, we have so many other candidates on the ballot, including people who are going to represent you in the State House, in your local city or town, and they're making decisions. They're making decisions on education, on healthcare, on public safety, on funding, on support for seniors, right? On a range of things. All the callers who called in on issues of climate and the environment. This is where the rubber meets the road. So your vote matters. Your vote is your voice. And this is what it means to live in a democracy. Get out and do the one thing or a one thing that you have control of, that you have autonomy over, that you have a voice in, and that is your vote. So make a plan to vote. You can vote early in Massachusetts. You can vote by mail. You can vote on November 5th. But please, don't take it for granted either, right? We have to speak up. And the reason that you and I have more protections in Massachusetts than gay people in other states is because people elected policymakers to be in office to make sure that they had their rights. The reason that we lead when it comes to protecting women's access to abortion and reproductive freedom is because there were local and state officials, right, who took action to make that so. So that's what I'd say to them, Joey. And I encourage you to convey that message back to people. I also think it's important, anybody, and you're in college or in school, okay, anybody who knows anybody in New Hampshire or in Maine, or in any of the swing states, you should be calling, texting, writing friends, family, colleagues, former colleagues, and telling them to go vote. The stakes could not be higher. So much is on the ballot right now. What I also say to them is, you may not agree with everything that Kamala Harris, who I served with, Tim Walz, who I currently serve with, are offering, but you don't agree. Nobody agrees with everything I say, right? Even my mother doesn't, okay? But you have to go with directionally who's going to stand up and support what's right. And the case could not be clearer, right? As you see that man dance on stage the other day, for God's sakes, right? So get people out, get them voting for Kamala and Tim. Joyce Craig is a great candidate up in New Hampshire. So much of what we do as a region, all right? New England, I want to work with governors in other New England states who want to work on clean energy, who want to work on renewables, who want to build out transmission lines that go across our states that better are able to deliver renewables. I want to work on economic development as a region, and that's why I'm strongly supporting Joyce Craig for governor up in New Hampshire. Also a distinction in that race is Joyce is the candidate who believes in reproductive freedom. Listeners out there, and I want you to take this in, New Hampshire is the only state, and I grew up there, I love my state, the only state in New England that has yet to codify Roe. Yet to codify Roe. And the person who stood in the way with that was Governor Sununu, and the person who will stand in the way of that going forward is Kelly Ayotte. Joyce Craig supports women, trusts women, and supports reproductive freedom. So I just encourage people to go vote and talk to those who are out there in other states to get after it, because this is your democracy.
So there, Joey. In any case, we got to squeeze in.
Thank you, Joey.
It's an important call. Nia from Roxbury. Thank you, Joey. You're on with the governor. Welcome, Nia.
Hi, thank you for taking the call.
Of course.
I'm calling to gun control.
Yep.
And I want to apply for.
By the way, this is horrible. Nia's daughter was one of the kids who was shot at the Dominican Festival this summer. And because the connection's bad, whoever took the call say in my ear what Nia wanted to ask of the governor, and I'll try to convey it. Can someone tell me that? What was the
She's grateful for the ghost gun legislation and is asking for more.
She says she is grateful for the ghost gun legislation, but she is asking for more.
We're sorry,
Nia, I'm really sorry. The connection's horrible.
Nia, I am so sorry about your daughter. I am so sorry for that unimaginable heartache, and it's just something that no parent should have to see. Too many have, and too many continue to see that kind of heartache every single day. And that's why I was proud to sign that bill a couple weeks ago, Nia, that bans ghost guns, bans 3D printed guns. It also took more steps to enable us to take, whether you're a family member or friend, to take guns away from people who are a danger to themselves or other people, right? These are the things that we need to do. And we need to elect candidates nationally who support these measures. One of the things that holds us back as a state is that there just isn't uniformity. Other states, New Hampshire, you don't even require a permit for a gun. The lack of universal background checks, simple things that could be done to reduce gun violence need to be done. And so much of that is with members of Congress, members of the Senate, and the President. And, Nia, I encourage you to stay on the line. I'd love to talk to you further if you don't mind giving me your number.
She was also talking about there not being police presence at the Franklin Park Festival. Her daughter was shot in the leg.
We certainly need to support. We need to support law enforcement. Yeah. We need to support law enforcement because they're up against it. There are a lot of guns out there, and again, they're coming from other places, other states. But it's something that we need to do as well.
Nia, please stay on hold, and we'll get your contact information and give it to the governor. Governor, here's the deal: if you ride here on a horse next time, you get 2 hours. Can we make a deal?
Oh. Is that that's a win? I was going to say.
Jim is
I'll talk to Jillian about that.
Jim is quite the equestrian.
Oh, I am really quite the equestrian.
I look forward to that. Although the people, we won't shut down Boylston Street to do it. That's for sure. I'll ride in a bike lane.
Okay.
Nice to see you.
Thank you very much, Governor Maura Healey, for being with us. We much appreciate your time. Thank you for listening. Thank you for people that come down to the Boston Public Library. You keep up with us 24/7 way of our broadcast, or check out our TikTok page. Tomorrow, our fourth ballot question on unionization of Uber and Lyft drivers. We're going to do that. We're going to speak with former Public Safety Secretary Andrea Cabral, current Massachusetts Education Secretary Pat Tutwiler, and Massachusetts Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley. I want to thank our crew, Zoe Matthews, Aidan Comley, Nicole Garcia, Hannah Loss, our engineer John the Claw Parker, our executive producer Jenny Bologna, our team here at the BPL, Maddie Geyer, Brad Lewis, Sandra Lopez Burke, Juan Jose Cadena, our host at the Newsfeed Cafe and the Lenox Hotel. I want to mention Jim and I are moderating an event November 6th, day after the election, with Cy Montgomery and her great new book, What the Chicken Knows, at the Armory, Arts at the Armory. For tickets and info, go to thewilbur.com. Culture Show is on right after us. I'm Marjorie Egan.
I'm Jim Brody.
Thanks again for tuning in today. Hope you can tune in tomorrow, and have a great afternoon.
And you are listening to Boston Public Radio on 89.7 GBH. It is 1:54. It is the next to the last day of our fall membership drive. I'm Sonia Lee. I'm joined by Kiki Lowa, and we're here asking for your contribution to keep Boston Public Radio on the radio here in Boston and available to all. If you appreciate the program, I hope you give now. gbhnews.org, 888-897-9424.
And right now, support GBH by giving $10 a month and receive an annual online online subscription to the New York Times. You'll get 2 of the most trusted names in journalism with your 1 contribution to GBH. This is a limited offer just for today. No need to worry about exceeding the 5-article limit. You'll have the luxury of reading as much as you want. Save articles, blogs, and videos for later, and you'll be able to access them from any device. Sign up as a sustaining member at $10 a month or give $120 all at once. The deadline is coming up tonight at 7 p.m. After that, the Times won't be available through GBH. Give online at gbhnews.org or by calling 888-897-9424.
And if you want to support Boston Public Radio and get the Times, well, you only got 5 minutes left. And we are working on the last goal for Boston Public Radio today, looking for 15 contributions, 15 people to give in just the next 5 minutes. We've heard from some wonderful folks already giving. Bernadette in Cambridge, thank you so much. Patricia in Essex, thank you. 15 contributions. We're wrapping up the next to the last day of Boston Public Radio here. We could sure use your contribution. You can give online at gbhnews.org or 888-897-9424.
And speaking of thank yous, thank you to Valerie in Providence, Rhode Island, who says this gift is in honor of Sunita Williams. Loved her conversation with Jim and Marjorie. Commander Williams is an incredible inspiration for us all. Many thanks to GBH for your incredible content, especially Jim and Marjorie, my favorites. Well, thank you so much, Valerie, for your contribution. You make your contribution and support are what make it possible for us to bring you content like this. Join along with Valerie and others and make your contribution right now, gbhnews.org or calling 888-897-9424.
And now we're down to just 4 minutes left for you to support Boston Public Radio and pick up this annual online subscription to the New York Times. Read as much as you want across all your devices. And this is a great partnership that we have, that we're able to provide you with day-to-day news coverage here on GBH. Plus, thank you with this annual subscription to the New York Times. This is the again, the deadline's 7, but if you want to get that gift in and support Boston Public Radio here, this is the time to do it. 4 minutes to go, $10 a month as a sustaining member, or you can do $120 all at once. Maybe you could do a little bit more. gbhnews.org, 888-897-9424.
That's right. Setting up an automatic monthly deduction from your bank account or credit card is honestly the common way to pay for many ongoing services. You can support your ongoing use of GBH that way too by becoming a sustaining member. It's the best way to support GBH, and your support is ongoing, so your membership is always current. Plus, it's easy to change at any time. Sign up right now as a sustaining member at $10 a month, and again, get that New York Times online at gbhnews.org or by giving us a call, 888-897-9424.
11. Can we get a rally here? Come on. Can we get a little rally for Boston Public Radio and Jim and Marjorie? Looking for 11 more contributions. We have just about 3 minutes left. We heard from a fan in Warwick, Rhode Island, says, in the midst of all the sanity, GBH radio and streaming keeps me sane. We hear a lot of that. Do you feel the same? We hope you'll give now. 11 nine contributions now in these next couple of minutes. gbhnews.org, 888-897-9424.
Tomorrow is the last day of this membership drive. Thanks to everyone who has already given. If you've yet to support GBH, you are running out of time. Please make it known that BPR on GBH is important to you by giving right now. Make your contribution. It's easy to do when you go online and click that donate button at gbhnews.org or by giving us a call at 888-897-9424.
And GBH has you covered this election season. You've heard been hearing the mini debates on the ballot initiatives. Tomorrow evening at 7 o'clock, we're having a debate with U.S. Senate debate between Elizabeth Warren and challenger John Deaton. This is must tune in listening. We're hoping you can take a couple minutes now to support that listening, and you can do that easily at gbhnews.org, 888-897-9424. Here's the deal: we are now down to just seven contributions. A little under 2 minutes left to support Boston Public Radio. And also, you can still get the New York Times, and it counts towards Boston Public Radio. $10 a month, $120 all at once, gbhnews.org.
Mozart's Linz Symphony with Jukka-Pekka Saraste conducting the Scottish Chamber Orchestra.
Support for WCRB comes from you. And the Celebrity Series of Boston, presenting the Jerusalem Quartet, returning to Boston with a program that